Good evening and welcome to the Tempe City Council meeting for January 18th, 2018 here in the Harry E. Mitchell Government Center. For all those that are able and willing to stand, could you join me in the invocation led by Councilmember Shapira, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance?
As is my tradition, in lieu of a public prayer, I will turn to the east and pray to myself. I encourage others to pray or reflect in accordance with your own tradition. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
With that, I look to approve council meeting minutes. Councilmember Granville.
Thank you, Mayor.
Move to approve council meeting minutes items 3A1 through 3A2.
By Councilmember Granville and seconded by Councilmember Keating. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries forward. Councilmember Granville.
Thank you, Mayor. Move to approve items 3B1 through 3B18.
It's been moved by Councilmember Granville. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Shapira. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Move forward. The next item on our agenda is the mayor's reports and announcements. And I have one announcement, and then I will give from the dais. I'm excited to announce that we are working in partnership with our city clerk's office to release our second annual board and commission's annual report. The city of Tempe has 27 boards, commissions, and public bodies that advise the mayor, the council, the city council, and our staff on topics that range from economic development and sustainability to veterans affairs and disability concerns. More than 250 Tempe residents and community members serve on our boards and commissions. The community input they provide to the city council is so valuable, and often it really does guide us on important issues facing our community. This annual report serves as a whole, as a resource guide in understanding the issues and proposals that our boards and commissions are working on and how they relate to the city council's strategic priorities for not only the city council and our entire community. I do want to take a moment to thank all of those in our community who serve on our city boards and commissions. We are grateful for your service. I'd also like to thank our city clerk's office, Ms. Kuiper, for helping us compile all this information and get it ready to share with the public, all of you. The report will be published online on my city webpage and also the city clerk's webpage. We will also be sharing it on social media and in an email, so keep your eyes out to look for that. That's all the announcements I have. Mr. Manager, do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm very pleased this evening to present to you and to the community an update regarding the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center, better known as Fabric. And we have some special guests with us tonight who will introduce themselves to give that update. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Hi, we're the co-founders of Fabric, the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center. My name is Angela Johnson. I'm actually the co-founder of Arizona Apparel Foundation, our nonprofit, and of Label Horde.
And I'm Sherry Berry. I am the founder of Arizona Fashion Source and the other co-founder of Arizona Apparel Foundation. We put together a small collection of photos because we literally have thousands of them. And I thought it would be useful to see that the once vacant Tempe Performing Arts Center is now a much prettier, very active place. And on any given day, besides the 20+ businesses that are now operating out of the building, we have classes and events and all kinds of activities that the community participates in to help grow their fashion businesses right here in Tempe.
So what is Fabric? Well, I mentioned it's a fashion incubator. It's basically solving a problem. The problem is that now with modern technology, people can sell things direct to consumer online, and they don't need to follow the same old model of making something wholesale, making it to scale, making 100,000 of them overseas somewhere, selling them through wholesale chains. Designers now make things out of their house, and then once they grow out of their house, they have to take a giant leap to manufacture something. And most of these small designers aren't ready to do that. So there was a need to supply a place that could help those designers go from that hobby, home-based business into the manufacturing world in a smaller step. Basically providing them with no minimum manufacturing, with design and tech pack help, which are the things that you need in order to manufacture, provide them with all the other resources that they need in order to get started. So that's why we started Fabric, and it's a community of literally hundreds, and if not thousands, of people in Arizona who actually need this service. And it's been something that's been a passion of mine for 17 years. So pulling together this community and now providing a home for them has been like the most amazing thing to us. Inside our walls, like I said, we provide manufacturing, but we provide education, classes, workshops, consultations to help the designers get started. We have a nonprofit that provides all kinds of programs and services to the community. Sherry's going to tell you a little bit about what it's done. We've also provide co-working offices and event spaces and just space that designers can all network and be around each other, as well as resources that are online as well, including a directory of all fashion businesses, classifieds where people can find fashion-related jobs, calendar of events, and all kinds of ways that they can connect with each other.
So we moved into the building in October of 2016, and we wanted to take a little bit of time to update you on what's happened in the first year. And we left off some of the really exciting things that have happened since October 2017, but we're really, really proud of some of the things that we've accomplished. And so here's a list of numbers. Thank God most of them are big numbers, but we have helped almost 200 emerging brands with design development and no minimum manufacturing services. In the building, there are 4 to 5 classes every single week, and at least 1 or 2 of them is offered free to the public. We have in-house 9 fashion brands that are using the upstairs offices as their design studios and manufacturing facility. And we also have 3 emerging designers that we sponsor in the building through scholarships. We have an application out right now for our next cohort. Someone from our last cohort grew, added employees, and now has a business inside Fabric, and so we're really excited to get in our next class. The foundation that we formed in April of 2016 now has almost 400 volunteers. They have served almost 6,000 hours in just improving the building, and there's almost another 8,000 hours in our first year that they have served to help sponsor the programs and services that we offer back to the community. We have personally invested almost $60,000 in receipts and capital improvements to the building, and we've also had several huge donations to the space that are offering different, more capital improvements that just make the building, which was a little outdated, a lot more pretty. We have all kinds of events in the building. There's almost one a week. And we've also sponsored 17 events that we've donated free to the public to help programs and services like women veterans. We have created 12 jobs in the building that average $37,000 a year, and these are fun jobs. These are fashion jobs that are here in Tempe, so they're technical design jobs and pattern makers and people who can help produce material. We also have a really neat program where we're sponsoring an enclave from the Center for Habilitation in our building. We have 5 young ladies that we've trained to sew, and we've actually gotten them a job sewing banner bags out of recycled ASU banners that are about ready to be sold in the ASU bookstore. We have also worked with EVIT to sponsor a design student who actually got to design and manufacture her own dress and put her label in it that were then donated to the Cinderella Affair. We have a sourcing library in our building, which is, I think, unique to the country that 240 designers have utilized. and over 350 of them has used the makerspace that we provide within Fabric. We have also done a ton of tours in this building. Everybody loves it. Everybody's interested in it. We logged about 800 in the first year, and we think there's more because we couldn't keep track of all of them. And 19 of them have been educational tours in the building.
So basically, we just wanted the opportunity to show you what's happening in this building. These are the people who use the building, and this is a fraction of the people. This is from December 2nd, when we had a fashion show that featured 60 local designers in one show. This is those 60 local designers and their models coming together to show the support for each other, to collaborate, and to say thank you to the city of Tempe for providing this much needed service that hopefully will be a model for other cities to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vice Mayor Hernando Savage?
You know what, just really quick, Sherry and Angela, I can't tell you, I mean, how exciting it is and what a success you guys have become. And I think nobody really had any doubts, but we never even imagined what you would be able to do. And not only just with the investment that you've made in that building, but the way that you've really welcomed in the community and helped so many people, different organizations. I've been very fortunate to attend many different events there that you guys have held and to help sponsor. And I just got to say thank you. I mean, you are truly, I think, what Tempe is all about. So I can't thank you enough for what you guys do. And I think the improvements and things that you're doing and you're making to the city of Tempe, we should be very proud. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would be remiss, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I didn't also recognize that the success of the Fabric work in our building over the last year or so would not have been possible without the work and dedication of our city staff. I want to recognize our Economic Development Director, Donna Kennedy, and also Jill Bushbacher, who's sitting in the front row. They made this happen with their vision and their ability to find such a great tenant for the building, and we thank them for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. All the items listed on the consent agenda will be considered as a group and will be enacted with one motion by the City Council. Unless an item is removed for separate consideration, members of the public may remove public hearing items for separate consideration. Public hearing items are identified with an asterisk, and council members may remove any item for separate consideration. If you do wish to speak on a public hearing item, please fill out a speaker's card located at the back of the council chambers and give it to our deputy city clerk, and she'll hand it to our city clerk, and I'll call your name as your turn. Again, I want to mention that a public hearing item that where individuals can speak is marked with an asterisk. If it does not have an asterisk, it is not a public hearing item. With that, the consent agenda is as follows. Miscellaneous items 5A1 through 5A12, and I just want to make one point on, if I iPad open back up. I just want to, on 5A1, I know this is a consent agenda, but I just want to recognize, we talked about earlier about the boards and commissions and the reports we're going to have coming out and how we value the input of our residents and our citizens. But I just want to recognize, we have Allie Cohn in the audience. She is going to be the new member of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission. We're appointing her. She lives in Tempe. She's been involved in many different organizations in our community, and she's going to be a great addition to the Mayor's Youth Commission, Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission. So thank you, Allie. And then the next is awards and bids, items and contracts, items 5B1 through 5B16. And resolutions, items 5C1 through 5C6. Again, any agenda item that is marked with an asterisk is a public hearing item, and it can be removed by a member of the public. If anyone would like to have a public hearing item removed, could you please get my attention now? Anyone in the public? I don't think I have any cards. I have different cards for different things. I'll turn to my council colleagues. Councilmember Granville.
Item 5C6.
Vice Mayor Hernando Savage. All right. Anyone else have any other items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I look for a motion for the consent agenda as read, with the exception of item 5C6. It's been moved by Councilmember Shapiro, seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. That motion carries 7-0. Now we'll move on to items 5C6. Mr. Granville.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the resolution that we have regarding a border wall, I believe because the reasoning is in part because of the environmental impacts, but also I believe because of the impact to the people of Tempe and the effect that it has in it being an open and inclusive relationship, open and inclusive community. Of course, I support that. In this case, though, I'm going to be voting against this for a couple reasons. I do think that this gets us into a partisan / federal world that we don't want to be a part of. I certainly understand that environmentalism is a thing, that we are near Mexico, but I don't think anything that crosses the border from Mexico is probably going to make its way into Tempe. Even if it did, that aside, I think this is a very slippery slope. For example, DACA is one of the things the federal government's concerned with right now. We certainly have people in Tempe that are here under DACA. They will be directly affected by DACA. Will we vote on that someday? There are Supreme Court justices who, on a 4-3 vote, decided whether or not if Roe versus Wade or Citizens United existed. Will we be weighing in on Supreme Court votes? I think the issue is this, is there's a large portion of the city population which may or may not agree with everything the federal government does. Right? If it was free puppies and kittens, 20% of the city would disagree. I want to make sure that we only focus on things that are the most directly related to the citizens of Tempe, most directly related to Tempe issues. We always often complain about how the state and the federal government try and muck in our business. And we're in some ways doing this, I think, in the reverse. And I think it sets a dangerous precedent for us getting involved in things where I don't know how we say no to the next one. And so while I have personal opinions on this, I would never want a Tempe resident to feel like we or I am not their guy because I am pro or anti-Trump. Because rest assured, a council 6 years ago could have passed a resolution about Affordable Care Act, saying that everyone in the city has health care too. And we wisely chose to pass on that option. And so I would choose to pass on this option as well.
Councilman Shapiro?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to address, I think, a false equivalency in what Councilmember Granville describes. He talks about the federal government and the state government, quote, mucking in our business. The way they muck in our business is they preempt laws, actually prevent us from passing laws. They take revenue, or they threaten to take revenue that was revenue that belongs to us. They take us to court, they sue us. I mean, that's mucking in someone's business. This is a resolution to express an opinion that, if the majority of this council agrees with it, is one that a majority of this council will be expressing to the federal government. I think that if we were trying to say that we were going to infringe on something that was within the supremacy clause, that we were trying to take over some legal responsibility of the federal government, that would be one thing. Like if a city that was on the border was saying, you know, we're going to build a border here, or we're going to tear down the border that the federal government built, that would be us mucking in their business. This is us expressing our opinion, if that is the opinion of this council. And I just have a lot less concern with that. Frankly, the state government does this quite frequently. They send resolutions to the federal government about issues that are of uniquely federal concern. Again, it's expressing an opinion, and to the argument of taking our time, spending time on something like this, you know, we're just going to be here a little bit later than we would have been otherwise because we're working on this issue. It's not taking away from anything else that we're doing.
Vice Mayor Ardano Savage.
Thank you, Mayor, too. I just want to express the fact that, you know, I definitely do have some concerns about this resolution. And, you know, I certainly respect my council colleagues. But, you know, I really do truly believe that it's important that we continue to focus on local policy, local issues. And this, to me, is definitely a federal issue. And I just don't think this is the proper venue to be able for us to be addressing it. So I'm going to continue to do what I do, what I believe is really important as a city council person, and that's serve the residents of Tempe. And I want to make this always the best place to live, work, learn, and play, and to raise a family. For those reasons, I will not be voting for this resolution tonight.
Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, listen to everybody and kind of weighing in on last week and the weeks before and on this issue, and me personally guiding a team of other electives this past summer to the border for a border tour to go through customs, to go through the border security wall and issues, to talk about trade, to see factories down in Nogales, to understand the business and the business relationships that we could actually prosper within the city of Tempe. I still have to say that we still have to focus on Tempe issues. I think that our constituents put us up here to worry about Tempe, to worry about things that happen within our city. Now, there's things that I think we can, as Tempe, have an effect, and that is through our business relationships with Mexico. That is through trade agreements. That is through MOUs. I personally oppose the wall, but I'm not going to use this council for my personal opinion to vote a certain way. I have to look at this logically, and I think that staying neutral on this and letting the federal government handle this issue. I will voice my opinion privately. I will write my letter to my president on my concerns about that, because there's information that I hope our president does take in account, and that is listening to the boots on the ground at the border, listening to the people that deal with it day in and day out, that understand the problems and the issues. I can't sit here and say what's right or wrong because I'm not down there. I visited it, I've been down there a few times, but I'm no way entrenched in what is going on down there. And I'm just hoping that those issues, which I believe with our law enforcement, with our personnel, will have a message to our federal government on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Personally, I don't think a 100% wall across the border is appropriate. I think that there are certain things that have to be considered, and this letter does point out some of those things. But I can't sit here and use this council to vote that way, so I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to just express my view on this as well. And in my years of serving as mayor, we have not had a non-binding resolution come forward to a council vote. And some of that is because instead of resolutions, we've worked to send letters to our congressional delegation or to our president on issues that matter at a national level. And some of that is because I don't believe in these types of non-binding resolutions, and I never have, actually. I think that when we use the power of our vote, that we should be voting on items that are within our municipal business of the city and that would have binding effects of our community as well as future councils. I do have to say that I am not by any means in favor of the border wall. I believe that the border wall would have a detrimental effect on our environment. Some of that has been expressed tonight, damage our relationship with Mexico, and we have hugely pressing issues and national needs that we could be spending and focusing on and funding, including like housing that we talked earlier tonight with our Housing Authority Board, healthcare, and education. I'm happy to sign on a letter. I think we at our last council meeting or work study session, we approved sending a letter to President Trump as well as our congressional delegation. And I think it expresses the opinion on this issue. But I don't believe that a non-binding resolution that does not relate to Tempe per se should really become a regular course of business in the city of Tempe. And I just thought I should voice my opinion on that. Councilmember Cubie.
Well, it appears we don't have the votes for the resolution, but I would like to have my say in any case. You're right, Mr. Mayor, this isn't a normal resolution, but we do not live in normal times. And I do not in any way want to normalize what is going on with this proposed suggestion to put $70 billion into a border wall. And it's not just the border wall, it's the militarization of the wall, it's creating a private prison, it's creating very large deportation forces. And we've heard talk that we're going to be talking about a nonpartisan infrastructure bill, that we're going to be investing in infrastructure. How are we possibly going to invest in infrastructure if we're taking $70 billion off the table, especially after these tax cuts? How are we possibly going to do the infrastructure improvements that all of the cities are eager to sort of jump into? So I would like to say that this is a looming tragedy. The border wall is a looming tragedy for wildlife and people, for the environment and the economy. And when you look at the environmental issues, yes, the border cities are more impacted. The Chiricahuas are expected to see jaguar populations increase, so we're going to see some interesting human-animal interactions there. We expect issues with flooding, issues that we hadn't had before with flooding, with species being impacted, with habitat corridors being impacted. So that's the environmental issues. And I don't know if I would have brought it here to the council if it were just environmental issues, but there's so much more. And I've mentioned the economic impacts. Let's look at the trade impacts we've started. And Councilmember Navarro, you've led this, and a delegation, Tempe interest to work more with Mexico. I know at Arizona State University, we have many, many collaborations and partnerships with Mexican universities. Surely this border wall is going to impact the trust level that we have with our neighboring country and our partners there, and that could have devastating impacts on Arizona trade and on Tempe trade and future opportunities with trading with Mexico. Let's look at the tribal impacts. Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian Community are very important partners to the city of Tempe. We receive gaming grants from we receive gaming grants from SRP, MIC, and we collaborate them on almost a weekly basis. When we talk about a mountain and development there, we're just daily talking to the tribes. And the Intertribal Council has condemned the border wall. They did a very similar resolution, and one of their chief objections is this border wall would cut the Tohono O'odham Nation in half. It would divide nations, it would divide communities, it would divide habitats and species, and would be devastating. So our truly valued partners stood up against this through that resolution. So I've talked about the environmental impacts, the economic impacts, but let's talk about what we really stand for in the city of Tempe. We proclaim throughout the city in posters that we're an inclusive city, that we welcome immigrants. And when you think about it, we're not worried at this dais here. We're not an endangered, and our security is not threatened as individuals and families, but I sure know families that are endangered. And I know from talking to school board officials and people in the schools that many of our students are impacted and will be impacted by this wall. They live in such insecurity, whether they're DACA students or not DACA students just yet, and their families, many of whom are citizens, some are undocumented, they live in daily fear of deportation. And this $70 billion investment is going to strike right to the heart of that family's security. So you might say that we can stand up as individuals, but cities across the country and border states are standing up, over 35 to date. And it's not just cities right along the border. And so it's time for cities to stand up and say, yes, it is going to affect our city economy, our regional economy, and our state economy. There's times in the history of this nation where we need to stand up. And this is one of those times, and that's why I'll be voting yes. And I appreciate that we're doing a letter. That's also important. But I think there's times, and respect to Councilmember Granville's point of view, we're not talking, it's always this false equivalency, the straw man argument that if you do this, we'll be weighing in on every federal decision. Well, no, we're not asking for that. We're talking about this very huge federal decision of $70 billion investment. And then again, speaking to you, Mr. Mayor, about this isn't the normal process where we have a resolution about this. We don't live in normal times, and we need to act and stand up together, united as cities. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else, Mr. Granville? Mr. Keating, would you like to say anything?
No, thank you, Mayor.
This is a non-public hearing item. You can speak.
I'm boots on the ground from Douglas, Arizona, and I have the information you need.
Ma'am, this is a non-public hearing.
Just give me 3 minutes.
Something to represent all of us, you should be allowing for public comment.
Give me a time so I
But-
can speak.
Is it the
I'm from
pleasure of the
Douglas,
council?
Arizona,
Is it the pleasure of the council to allow a public hearing? Okay. We are going to allow public comments at this time. Again, that's why I stated it's not. It was the way it was agendized. It's not a public hearing item. And we had discussion last week. Actually, we discussed this item at a work study session, and we brought this forward, which that was a time as well to have public comments. But the council has decided that we will grant public comment on this. You do have 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to speak on this item. Because it's a public appearances, that usually happens at the end of the meeting. That's what the cards was agendized. But then, are you Ms. Nova?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please come forward. State your name and place of residence for the record.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor. My name is Alice Novoa. I was born and raised in Douglas, Arizona. I'm a native from there. I'm a citizen of the United States of Mexican ancestry. And what's happening at the border, we are infested with illegal aliens. And the name, I can bring up the name illegal aliens because United States Code, they say illegal aliens. We have to understand, and I want people to write this down, please. There is the Aztlán movement. The Aztlán movement is a radical Islamic Mexican Catholic movement that plans on taking over the entire United States and turning it, giving it to the overthrow and the takeover of the entire United States from Mexico. And I would tell the audience, please write this down, Aztlán. I'm going to spell it, look it up on YouTube, and look on map images, Aztlán. A as in Alice, Z as in zebra, T as in top, L as in love, A as in Alice, and N as in not. We have the cartels bringing cougars to the border. There's no cougars in Douglas, Arizona. But we have cartels from Agua Prieta. There's killings going on in Agua Prieta every day. If you go to the Nogales and about the economy, free trade for Mexico. We pay a 35% tariff to send our product to Mexico. They have free trade. The DACA students are a part of the Aztlán movement. Sonia Sotomayor is an Aztlanera. The AG, Javier Becerra from California, he's an Aztlanero. He's either an anchor baby or he's an illegal alien. And the 14th Amendment does not cover anchor babies. Now I'm going to give you 3 U.S. codes. And yes, you should not meddle with federal. The wall will go from corner to corner because we have border patrols who are dying. We have citizens who are dying, killed by illegal aliens because this is supposedly their territory. Now I'm going to give you 3 U.S. codes. United States Code, USC 81325. It says very clearly, any illegal alien sneaking into the United States other than the port of entry, it is 6 months federal prison, even though they call it a misdemeanor, because a misdemeanor is up to a year. Then you have also USC 81324. Any organization, any person harboring any illegal alien, that would include spouses, is 5 years federal prison. 5 years federal prison, and that's the minimum. Then I'm gonna speak one more. USC 18 space 1015. You know what it says? It says on ENF, talks about fraudulent paperwork, and it says any person pretending to be a United States citizen and works in the United States or gets any welfare, food stamps, and access is 5 years federal prison with a $7,000 fine.
I'm sorry, your time is up, but each speaker gets 3
You
minutes.
will not count United States citizens of Mexican ancestry in the same block of illegal aliens. And when it comes to the Papago Nation, there's nothing on the side of Mexico.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a speaker in a public meeting who just slandered a United States Supreme Court justice, and I think it deserves a response.
Well, that's
You
okay,
referred to Sonia Sotomayor.
Ma'am, I appreciate you coming.
You referred to Sonia Sotomayor as an anchor baby.
No. She's from Puerto Rico. She's an
right.
Aztlanera. And so is Mr. Navarro. You know about Aztlán. You're from Laleo, right?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so no, I'd like to finish. The slander. So,
ma'am, you can take a seat.
She's going to be
the slander.
I'm going to ask you one more time.
Sonia Sotomayor was born in New York City. She is an American citizen. To refer to her and to say that it has something to do with some Islamic / Catholic / Mexican conspiracy that a woman born in New York City whose ancestry is from Puerto Rico, which is part of America, is just
the United
unbelievable.
States of America. This is not America.
We
have Mexico, America.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking. I let you speak. I didn't interrupt you. To call Javier Becerra also a United States citizen.
He's not.
He's not a United States citizen.
No, sir. He's an anchor baby or an illegal alien. And so is
Ma'am, I'm speaking, ma'am. I let you speak, like I said.
I'm just giving you facts.
Ma'am, thank you for your comments. Thank you very much.
I just, the only reason I speak up, Mayor, just one other thing. The
Thank you,
reason I
ma'am.
speak up is these are people who have committed to serve their country, who have served their country for decades, and to be slandered like that in a public meeting, some people might watch this and think what she's saying is true. It's important to correct that misinformation so that people understand that what she's saying is slanderous and untruthful.
It's true.
All right, wait, excuse me, please, there will be no outbursts, thank you. We have our next, wait, Councilman Granville, wait.
I would just say, Mayor, and this is not meant to address the public, just as us as a body, we've just proven the point, right, of why this is the kind of thing I think that we shouldn't be going on, because look, I got elected for a couple things, right? Streets, parks, police, fire, you know, a few, like, these are the things that we do. And that's why I ran, and that's why I'm sitting here. And the idea that we're about to have a parade of people that are both for and against it, the concern to me is that whether they are for or against it, they're going to think a portion of this council is not their council. And I think we all agree that we are all everyone's council. And I think this exactly illustrates the point of, regardless of my personal opinion for or against a border wall, it's just not appropriate for us.
Okay. Please state your name and place for the record. You do have 3 minutes, and we're not going to, thank you.
I start?
Yes.
My name is Lori DeLuca, and I thank you, Colby, for mentioning that. So in the past 24 hours, I just wanted to show this to you. These are the signatures that I've gained in only 24 hours of people who are furious with this resolution. And I'm actually here to represent them because they do feel as though you are not here to represent them. So I'm here to speak on their behalf. And instead of just reading something, I think I just more want to address this sort of individually. I'm really concerned with what I've seen over the past few years on social media with a lot of the council members here. And I'll call you by name. Lauren Kuby, one. We obviously have a huge rift in this country that's been coming for a long time. It hasn't just started. And when I see people who work at our universities, who are in touch with a lot of young people, children, and I look on their social media site to find out what the latest restaurant is that's opening. And I see that they post things calling our president and people white supremacist. They're on your Twitter, I have screenshots. You have pictures of yourself at the Trump protest with people holding signs calling a Cheeto Nazi. You have pictures with you and Genevieve Vega, your friend running for office, with pictures of Trump making fun of his hair on your t-shirts. I'm really concerned about that. Don't you see any responsibility in your actions when you are supposed to be representing people? Can you not find a more mature way of doing things? Number two, your job as council members is exactly as Council Member Granville just said. You ran on platforms, and federal issues is not one of your platforms. If you want to run on federal issues, then please do, because we all respect the right for you to have your opinion on those issues, but it is not something for council. Lauren Kuby, I've seen you retweet things. You are pro-sanctuary city. You belong to Local Progress. You've signed a letter. You retweet when Chicago went up against, the federal judge went up against sanctuary cities. You retweeted, good job, Chicago. You have that. And your organization, Local Progress, has a big sign, Sanctuary Cities Welcome All. You don't want sanctuary cities because you are saying that the federal government is interfering in giving the cities, having cities be responsible for federal, but yet that's what you're doing here. So I want to be respectful of the time, and I thank you for speaking. But I find this people here with your social media sites to be really disturbing, very, very disrespectful, very grossly immature, and I just want to let you know that you are not representing our city well by doing that. And I do have these, which I'm happily forward over to all of you.
All right, thank you. And we're going to have a response by Councilman Kuby, and then we're going to go to the next speaker.
I don't want to respond to each and every individual charge, but know that cities face many responsibilities, and council members do too. And if you look amongst this council, I dare say I am a very hard worker and respond to citizen and constituent issues and services and problems very well. I'm very dedicated. It's my time to talk. It's my time to talk. I've not spoken out as to be a pro-sanctuary city because I happen to know, because I look at the nuance of public policy, that because of SB 1070, we can't go there with being a pro-sanctuary city. This is what Phoenix discovered too. And when you look at the city of Chicago, they're pushing back against the Department of Justice putting into their rules and their grant making that cities would not have any input on these policies. And so you're kind of cherry picking and misrepresenting things. And you know, I have freedom of speech as a council member and as a citizen. And you're right, I was at the Trump protests, I was at the Women's March, and I'll be at the Women's March as well. You can actually stand up for your city and your residents, and for those that are in the shadows, and do an effective job. And that's what I do.
All right. Ma'am, please go ahead and state your name and place of residence for the record.
My name is Veronica Monge, and I live at 4001 West San Miguel. And I am here representing Chispa, Arizona, a nonprofit organization, but I also attend ASU Tempe, and I have an organization there called Chispa ASU. It's a club. And so I'm here because this resolution to us, there's a lot of DACA students and there's a lot of people that attend the university. There's a lot of immigrants that are living here in Tempe while they stay here and go to ASU. And so this really does impact the city of Tempe. And to say that, you know, it is not your responsibility to give an opinion about this, it is your responsibility. Every elected official in every area of the valley has a responsibility to see for their constituency, and immigrants that live here that go to ASU are part of that constituency. And building this wall is only going to be separating people, and this is a free country, and this is America. I came here, my mother was an immigrant, I am a student, I am a citizen of the United States, and I believe that this wall and the money that's going to go to build this wall is going to be detrimental not only to the environment, but also segregate and divide everyone. And what's going to happen to the university once that happens? You know, ASU is top on technology. It's very top on innovation and infrastructure ideas and architecture and all of that. Where is that going to go when we build this wall and segregate and divide our communities? And aren't you all here human beings? Aren't we all human beings that are sitting in this room? Because that's what it boils down to. Do we have a heart? Yes, we have responsibilities. I have responsibilities in the organization that I work for, but I also have a responsibility as a human being to look out for my neighbors and to have an opinion when this has happened. And this will be detrimental not only to Tempe, but to all the cities worldwide. We saw that when, you know, the crash happened you know, the economic crash happened with Wall Street. It impacted everybody, right? Nobody gave opinions about that, but it's a true fact that it's going to impact everyone. And this is something similar to that. What's happening now is going to impact every city here in Arizona and in the U.S. And I just want to say that Lauren Kuby is a very respected person at the university, at the sustainability department, and she raises awareness of civic engagement, and she gets students involved like myself to come out and to talk about different issues. And we don't agree with everything, but we have a right to voice our opinion, and so does she, because she's a human being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us on this issue? You have up to 3 minutes. Please, before state your name and place of residence for the record.
Okay, my name's Laura Layton, and I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and I want you to know that everything that lady just said was true, because I've been a translator interpreter for 37 years. I've always loved helping Hispanics till I came to Arizona. And I also was a paralegal. I worked for lawyers for 23 years, and I worked with criminals, and I couldn't believe how many violent criminals are here that were violent criminals in their country, and they snuck into our country, and they've been killing Americans, raping Americans, robbing Americans. Is terrible. And also terrorists. I talked to a Border Patrol supervisor 14 years ago, and at that time he told me the Border Patrol estimates that there's over 19,000 Arab terrorists here, and they're sending them to different states and cities. When they have enough, he says, I believe that they're going to attack us. But anyway, what I wanted to tell you is there's tons of criminals, tons of terrorists coming over illegally. That's why we need that wall desperately. Also, like I said, I love helping Hispanics till I came here. When I came here, several of them, I was working for legal aid, and several of them told me, nuestro gobierno nos dice que estamos aquí para tomar nuestra tierra, vamos a matar a los gringos, which means our government's telling us that we're coming here to take back our land, and we're going to kill the white Americans. And I'm from New York City, I never heard of that before. And then I realized that all of the ones who told me that were Mexican. And then a few years later, because I worked for lawyers for years, several black and white mothers came to me and told me that their kids were all being beaten up, and all was by kids of Mexican descent. And I thought, that's strange. And they all said the same thing, even though they didn't know each other. They said, I think they're teaching them something in our schools. So I sent a letter to TUSD, because that's where they were teaching raza studies, which is Mexican American studies. They've had like 6 names already. And I asked them for the list of the books that they were teaching the kids. And first she said, no, the head of the program won't give it to you. He refuses. But then I went to the Attorney General, Tom Horn, and he said, you have a right. You're a mother. I have a right to know what they're teaching. So he got me the list of the books, and I read 34 of the books. And I brought you some of them. And they tell the kids in the books to kill whites, to hate whites, and also to make a revolution or a war against the United States. I'm just going to read you just a few of these sentences. Here's one. It says, any country based on capitalism is based on greed. That Declaration of Independence states that we the people have the right to revolution, the right to overthrow a government that has committed abuses and seeks complete control over the people. This is in order to clean out the corrupted, rotten officials that develop out of any type of capitalistic system. This is one of their books, their most used books. And here's another one here. It tells them how to make a revolution, and wait a minute here, I have it right here.
You're going to be out of time, ma'am.
It says, yes, and here it says, resist, resist, resist. You don't have to spell oppression. Your people are oppressed. You don't have to understand exploitation. Your people are exploited. You don't have to explain economics. Your people are economic slaves. And this is, it's called Mis hijos guerrilleros, means my warrior children. It tells them to make a revolution.
Ma'am, your time is up. Thank you.
All right, can I just
Thank
say,
you, ma'am. Your time is up.
all right, and this one says, kill the gringos and execute all white males over age 16.
Next. We have a next speaker.
If you
Please
want
state your
anybody
name
wants to see it
and
when we're
place
done, let
of
me know.
residence for the record, please, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Jin Witten, and I came from China legally. And I spent 1 year and a half volunteer tutoring in NGO not far from here at Guadalupe. And there are quite a lot of kids, our American citizens, and they are poor. Their education far lag behind to their peers. And I brought my son to give them some tutoring. And they don't have enough resources to help these kids grow up. And as this lady said, we don't need a border, the war. But the issue is, if there's not a war, the illegal immigrants will pour in this country and take advantage of the generosity of the American people. And they will use the resources that's supposed to be used to help our kids, our poor kids. And now, if you have this resolution and then something will be followed up, do you need to think about to help our neighbors, help our kids grow up first? This why is called American First, and get response, get echoed by so many Americans, and get President Trump elected. People voice out, but before that they are silenced. So if you think this resolution is good for American, good for Tempe, you need to think about our neighbors. Those poor kids, they don't have lunch, they don't have dinner to eat, and they have their backpack, their shoes are all donated. We need to protect our border, secure the border to help our neighbors first. And America has accumulated $20 trillion in debt. Do we have enough money to have more dreamers? Right now, there's 800,000. But if the border is not secured, will expect more. So this really terrible resolution, and will open the door to more. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name and place of residence for the record. You have up to 3 minutes.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Erlinda Calderón. Mil disculpas, yo no voy a hablar en inglés. Yo no estoy de acuerdo con todo lo que se ha comentado. Un muro no va a ser la solución para Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos no es un muro. Van a gastar demasiado dinero en un muro que podría estar utilizando Arizona en la educación de nuestros hijos, en seguir progresando Arizona. Yo amo Arizona, amo Estados Unidos. Yo no tengo nada que decir contra nadie porque este país ha sido mi país. He hecho lo mejor con mis hijos. Tengo 3 hijos ciudadanos y un DACA. Mi hijo DACA en este momento está sufriendo por todo lo que está sucediendo, porque él ha estado trabajando, estudiando en el colegio. Su sueño es ir a la universidad de aquí de Phoenix, pero su sueño se le ha visto obstruido porque él quiere comprarse una casa, quiere terminar de pagar su carro y quiere comprarnos una casa a la familia. Para mí, en estos momentos es frustrante, es vivir con mucho miedo por todo lo que está sucediendo con este presidente que tenemos en este momento. Desafortunadamente, y disculpe que se los digan, ese presidente entró atacando a los mexicanos, que éramos narcotraficantes, violadores, secuestradores. ¿Y qué es él? ¿Qué es este presidente? Salieron muchas mujeres diciendo que él era un acosador sexual. ¿Qué han hecho? ¿Qué han hecho con este presidente? Se han quedado callados, le han pasado porque es el presidente de Estados Unidos. ¿Qué clase de ser humano tenemos como presidente? Esto no es América, esto no es Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos es maravilloso. Estados Unidos es un lugar donde la gente puede venir a vivir con tranquilidad. Podemos trabajar, convivir todos juntos. Esto es Estados Unidos, no ese presidente que tenemos ahorita, que nos está acorralando, nos está haciendo daño a todas las personas, no nada más a los inmigrantes indocumentados. ¿Dónde están sus impuestos, sus taxes, que nunca lo ha dicho? Porque tuvo complot con Rusia, tantas cosas que han pasado. ¿Por qué la gente de Estados Unidos no se pone firme y busca un verdadero presidente para Estados Unidos? Estados Unidos es amor, no es esto que estamos viviendo. Es cierto, los padres indocumentados estamos viviendo en terror, que en cualquier momento va a llegar ICE y nuestros hijos se van a quedar solos y que ustedes los van a recoger y ustedes se los van a llevar a casas, hogares. Pero estoy fuerte y estoy lista para luchar contra toda la gente racista, nazista como este presidente. Estados Unidos no puede ser corrupto. Estados Unidos debe tener un presidente que realmente valga la pena. Y ese presidente que tenemos ahorita es lo peor que le ha sucedido a Estados Unidos. Es lo peor. No es el mejor. Es racista, narcisista, es racista. No todos somos malos. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Quiero la América que era antes. Quiero ser feliz aquí.
Ma'am, your time. Thank you. All right, the next speaker.
Thank you. My name is John White, Tucson, Arizona. Thank you for giving me this moment to speak. I hope you translate what was just said. I just wanted to give you a background of me and my resume. I grew up in the Air Force. My father spent 30 years. I spent a few years in the CAV. I'm a 19 Delta, specifically trained for border duty, stationed in Germany, facing Russians. Listen, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country, period. And when that time comes, when war does start, let me tell you, that witch comes out of that box. There's nothing putting her back in. There's only 2 rules of war. It's life and death. My colonel used another finger. Innocent men, women, and children will die. You have men, women, and children dying now from illegal aliens because of open borders. That's a fact. 2 sheriff deputies who just go to YouTube and look at it. Yeah, I'm too angry about it. I just want to tell you, there's over 13 million men just like me. We were trained specifically, search and destroy. No timeouts, no little white flags. That does not exist when you're boots on the ground and you have an enemy that wants to kill you. That's a fact. And they do want to take over this country. Not just Mexico, but the New World Order. It's all affiliated. And if you look at the Supreme Court or D.C., they're just as guilty. I'm here to protect you and your children and this great nation. I gave an oath. I will die protecting that oath. Thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you. All right, we are, no clapping, please. We have one more speaker. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
Hi, I'm Peggy McLean. I live in Tempe, and I'm going to preface this with, Colby, this isn't aimed at you because I know you did not vote for this SCOTO resolution. Before I came down here, Lauren, I saw your comments on TV. I just want to remind you, you represent the city of Tempe and residents, not Mexico, not the tribes, not the 35 other cities. Okay, the definition of city council, according to Merriam-Webster, is the group of people who make and change policy of a city. That's all you are supposed to do. The laws you make should affect the well-being and safety of Tempe residents. It's very simple. You have elevated yourselves above public servant as you overstep your boundaries on a daily basis. Many of you on city council have property walls around your homes, correct? At work, do you have a front door? An office? At work, sorry, I ran here. At work, do you have a front door to your office? Does your office have a door? Do you have keys to the front door of your office building and the door to your office? Can I enter your homes or your workplaces at any time of the day or night? President Trump was elected for several key reasons, one of which was securing the borders to keep us safe. Not only is this resolution not your responsibility, as some of you stated, this actually will ultimately hurt the city of Tempe. As an employee of a Tempe small business, which is completely dependent on the local economy and people moving to our state, my well-being, as well as that of our owners and my many co-workers' livelihoods are affected when out-of-staters will look at Tempe, like San Francisco, and see us as no longer safe. They will choose not to relocate here. And by the way, many of my co-workers are immigrants. Fisher Industries of Arizona, located right here in Tempe, was chosen as one of a handful of companies to develop a prototype for the border wall. They should be congratulated and supported. Their success will lead to other successes for their company, which leads to more business, more income, and more of a tax base for you to spend on your frivolous projects. Tempe and other Arizona cities do not have the infrastructure to haphazardly take on illegal immigrants and the costs associated with them. But it won't affect many of you, though, behind your locked and secure workplace and in the secure environments that some of you are hoping to attain by using Tempe Council as a step to a higher office. Robin Arredondo Savage put her life on hold to defend this country. You basically are spitting in her face, in the face of someone who risked her life for all of you.
Okay, I think that's it for all the public comments. Thank you. With that, I look towards, is there a motion in regards to item 5C6?
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Hernando Savage.
You were going to make a move to not approve it.
I'm looking for a motion regarding
Mayor,
item
I'd
5C6.
I'd like to.
She did, I seconded it.
I called
No,
on Vice Mayor Hernando Savage.
Oh, well, you can do it either way. It doesn't matter.
And I called on Vice Mayor Donna Savage. Am I missing something?
I'm just curious.
Just withdraw your motion.
Okay, there's been a motion by Councilmember Cubey to approve items 5C6 and been seconded by Councilmember Shapiro. Please vote. No, the city clerk has it. That motion fails 4-3. All right, next item on our agenda is our non-consent agenda. All the items listed on the non-consent agenda will be considered separately. Agenda items list scheduled for introduction and first public hearing will be heard, but will not be voted upon at this meeting. Agenda items scheduled for second public hearing and final adoption will be voted upon tonight. Miscellaneous items, 6A1 is to hold a public hearing to appeal the Development Review Commission's decision to deny the use permit to allow residential in a CSS zoning district for use permit standards and development plan review for a new 3-story, 16-unit attached single-family development for the Muse located at 1020 East Spence Drive. The applicant is Barry Riddell. This is a public hearing item. Agenda item 6A1 is designated as a quasi-judicial item. The City Council sits as a quasi-judicial body when there are hearing appeals. In this situation, the City Council must conduct itself as a court, not as a legislative body. Pre-meeting contact with the City Council on the quasi-judicial matters is prohibited. Any materials or conversations concerning this item shall be presented to the City Council and at the scheduled public hearing. If the appellant would like to make a statement, I see Ms. Go ahead. State your name and place of residence for the record, and I know, Wendy, who you represent, so.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of R.C. Spence and Mr. Joe Reese, requesting approval for 16 single-family homes at 1020 East Spence Avenue. So if I could, just to help orient you where the site is, I suspect most of the council is already familiar, but it is just shy of an acre, about 7/10 of an acre. It is a property that has been vacant for over 20 years on Spence, east of Rural. To give you also a little context, it's a property that is actually split zoning. It's been zoned this way since 1957 when it was annexed in, and it has a mix of both commercial and multifamily zoning. The site also has multifamily essentially or effectively surrounding it. And you can see from what I'm showing you, it's a very constrained site. It's only 100 feet wide, 305 feet deep. It's actually more narrow than the property to our east and less deep than the property to our west. It is also a site that under your general plan is shown for high density residential, for multifamily, for 65 dwelling units to the acre. Also shown as part of your light rail corridor, Apache Boulevard area plan, again, looking for multifamily, looking for high density to support the infrastructure and the investment the city of Tempe has made into that type of infrastructure and mass transit. The rail corridor growth area also, again, the desire to concentrate high density residential development near light rail, vacant parcel to convert to new housing options. I tell you all of this because when we first started the project, the very first proposal that we did, our original request when we looked at these plans was actually for multifamily. It was actually for 45 dwelling units. It was a mixed-use project with office, 54 feet in height. We filed that back in February of 2016. That is how long we have been working on this project. We found, however, because of the type of site constraints that I shared with you, that this type of density here was very challenging, that there's limited width for fire access and refuse vehicles, challenge to provide sufficient parking, can't do a subterranean garage, and conflicts with resident parking. And in particular, and this is going to be important and helps demonstrate why we had the proposal we have in front of you tonight, we really found that the fire and refuse turning radiuses is what kind of dictated our design. So what you see in front of you are directly out of the City of Tempe's fire code. And you will note that they are, if you are less than 110 feet, you're very limited in the type of options you can use for the site. So really the only one of two that works is the one you see on, well, it's the left here. And it has you kind of doing a side entry, which would locate or would sort of orient the buildings east and west, substantially reduce density, and frankly, dictate a multifamily product. It's not what we wanted to do. So as we looked a little bit further in your code, there is one option that allowed us to do a road right up the center of the property that met the fire code requirements and dictated the kind of design that we proceeded with. We also then stepped back and evaluated your, admittedly not finalized yet, but your character area plan for the area. And when we looked at that and when we evaluated the area and evaluated the neighborhood, there was a request for a more diverse range of housing types and products to support which are compatible with the existing. And in particular, we focused on the request for home ownership opportunities and for sale housing product. So here, Mr. Reese, after about over a year and a half, scrapped the entire plan, stepped back, and we came forward with a plan that we thought was much more in context for this very challenging site you see here with this plan, which is for 16 single-family attached residential units. We thought when we looked at the context that this is something that also worked very well with the surrounding property. To give you an idea of the renderings, what it would look like, engaging with the street, looking from the back of the property. So our current request to you today is 16 units, single-family attached residential, making use of the existing zoning today. It is for design review approval and for 4 specific use permits that, pardon, because of the quasi-judicial nature, I need to kind of run through. I will try to do it as quickly as I can. The first is for residential development within commercial zoning. Second is for the reduction in side yard building setback from 10 to 8. The third is the increase in height from 35 to 37 just in that commercial district, again, attempting to work within both districts. And the last is to reduce the front yard setback from 20 to 16, really to allow additional architectural articulation at certain locations, not across the entire front. So again, the first use permit, the request to permit residential in a commercial district. Here, the commercial is at the back of the site. It frankly doesn't have access to any street frontage. It simply, it doesn't make sense. It really needs to be residential. So the request is for residential within that commercial district. The second is the request for reduction in side yard setback from 10 to 8. And again, I've shared with you why, from your fire code and refuse maneuvering, why we ended up having to put through the center of the property the driveway. And when you do that, you will see that it creates a very constrained situation. We actually, when you looked at the adjacent properties, you'll notice that to our east is non-conforming side yard of 6 feet. And again, it has that side configuration. And then to our west, they actually have a use permit for reduction of the side yard as well. So when we lay it all out, when we look back at the character area plan, when we want single family here, when we evaluate that with the neighborhood, when you look at the fire drive aisle, it requires us to have a use permit for that minor deviation from 10 to 8 feet from the side yards. Again, use permit number 3, the request for additional height. It really is just in the commercial portion of the application. It's to allow that top portion of the building, the stairwell and the roof deck, and to create consistency across both zoning districts. And the last, again, is to reduce that front yard, not across the entire front. This was actually originally the request of staff, and it's to be able to create some pop-outs, to create some architectural interest from the street, from Spence, to engage with the street. Very quickly, not to test the council's patience too much, but when you look at the use permit criteria, it says a use permit shall be granted when these criteria are met, that we will not be detrimental to persons residing or working in the vicinity or neighborhood or to the public welfare in general. I would suggest to you certainly we will not. In fact, this is an underutilized property. It's been sitting vacant for over 20 years, and that we think that the addition of 16 single-family residences here, ownership, residence, will be a benefit to the neighborhood. Of course, it also has to show that there's no significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Again, I think that that's fairly self-evident, particularly when you look at the general plan designation looking for 65, and this is a substantial decrease in that type of density. This is not a nuisance. There's not going to be any emission, odor, dust, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare as a result of these use permits. Again, that it will not contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the downgrading of property values. I think it's clear that this will increase property values with for-sale housing, will engage with the street, and is very compatible with the surrounding properties. Again, compatibility with existing structures and uses, one of the use permit criteria. And finally, that there's adequate control of disruptive behavior inside and outside. Here, we've engaged with SEPTED standards, dense landscaping, our parking, our guest parking oriented towards the rear of the site. And then finally, I know that's a whole lot of criteria. I got to this point and figured I really wouldn't test the council's patience. So I've now run through all the use permit criteria. These are all of the DPR criteria, development plan review. Your staff has recommended approval. Your staff, your trained staff, is telling you that we have complied with all of these. We agree with them. We believe that we have complied with all of these as well. Certainly happy to discuss any of them in particular at the pleasure of the council. And then finally, I will tell you that we're very fortunate to have quite a bit of community support for this project tonight. We have 56 signatures in support. We have the support of the adjacent HOA, all of which have been turned into the council as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We're holding on to questions. We got a lot of public comment cards. So if we can go through that, and then we'll come back with some questions. You can come back up after the public comment.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Riddell. All right, we do have, this is a public hearing item, and we do have some cards from the audience. Mr. Shane Randall, please come forward. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Shane Randall. I'm a resident of Queen Creek, Arizona, and have born and raised in Arizona. I do work and play in Scottsdale and live in Queen Creek, as I said. I would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Reese and the developer on this project. I believe the small variances that he has asked for are justified in this case. I have had experience to work with Mr. Reese in both the business and recreational atmosphere. He has been a strong advocate for the community of Queen Creek and the local high school out there. I'm a member of the local high school booster club there. He has advocated and sponsored many events there, both for the town of Queen Creek as well as the town of our city of Scottsdale, in civic and community events that I have been involved with. Cannot speak highly enough of his business acumen as well as his professionalism, and would advocate for this project and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Phil Amorosi.
Phil Amorosi, 1432 East Cedar Street, Tempe. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here in support of the Muse on Spence. I live down the street from this property. I've driven by it for the past 20 years. This empty lot is mainly a dumping ground. No one wanted it because it was so narrow. Now we finally get a developer that wants to build not a big apartment complex, but 16 decent-sized for-sale townhomes that the city staff also approved of. And it was just denied by a really close 4-3 vote by the DRC. Now, the Gentilly neighborhood has a lot of empty lots, and anytime a developer wants to come in and do less than the maximum and do a for-sale product and not ask for any tax incentives, I think the city should welcome him. And I know the last time this developer was here, he had a very divisive project. It left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and even I was against that one. But this is different. These circumstances are different. That property had renters on it. The neighborhood didn't want what he was selling. It had a house, a nice house on there. This one is an empty lot. We'd be getting rid of a dumping ground, and we have overwhelming support from the neighborhood. Now, on this very same agenda, if you look down, there's you're going to be hearing about the Park Place Apartments. That's actually also going to be built right next to the same neighborhood. So I don't see why we should deny this developer building 16 for-sale townhomes when they're going to be asking for 285 student housing units. I think they're both needed, and I think they should both be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Abeda? Abeda? Oh, yeah. Charger.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the time to address this issue. I am advocating for it. I'm a lifelong resident of Gentilly Terrace neighborhood, soon to be 50 years, currently at 1418 South Kenneth Place for the last 18 years. So because of what you heard the attorney address, all those issues, those are all valid, okay? I would disagree that it's been a dumping ground. There was one home in there, way set back for a long time. But we have, with all due respect to the TOD, we can't have more people. We're bound by Union Pacific Railroad to our south. And so to have 16 units, home-owned units compared to more than that, I advocate wholly for that. For all those reasons, please consider approving them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Holly Bowers. Please state your name and place of residence for the record. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Holly Bowers, 1426 South Rita Lane. And I am here to basically convey reaching out to some of our neighbors, 40 of them, 40 residents within our neighborhood, about the project itself, and getting back feedback from about 25% of those 40 people that were in support of this project as in the latest iteration, the 16 unit first of all units. So I just wanted to convey that I basically 25% responses, as 100% responded that they were in support of the Muse for a 16 unit for sale housing development and have no objections or concerns regarding the project.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Eric Sandman, please come forward. State your name and place of residence for the record.
Thank you, council members. My name is Eric Sandman of 1402 South Gentilly Lane. I'd like to thank Ms. Riddell for her presentation. Many of my findings are congruent with hers. I'm an alumni of Arizona State with a civil engineering degree, and I have resided here since 2012. As a resident, I am glad to see that the lot at 1020 East Benz Avenue is being developed. I live in a unit facing this property, and this vacant lot has been an eyesore. As a civil engineer, I took some time to dive into the ordinance and see if the proposed development is really what is best for the neighborhood. The site has a practical difficulty given its narrow nature to develop in accordance with the ordinance, and I found that the proposed site is the best case scenario. Additionally, the proposed setbacks will not have any adverse effects on the neighboring properties, especially with the landscaping that has been proposed. In my professional opinion, not only is the proposed site harmonious with our neighborhood, but it is also in good spirit with the zoning ordinance and general plan. The zoning ordinance states 5 criteria that use permits should be granted on, and I believe, in my professional opinion, that the proposed development meets all of the criteria. The ordinance states that a use permit shall be approved provided that the site does not have the following impacts. 1, create a significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. This site will not cause a significant increase in traffic as 16 units will have a minimal impact on the neighborhood. 2, create nuisances arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. As a residential use is less impactful than other uses allowed by right in the CSS district, such as commercial warehouse or other small recycling center. 3, contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or to the downgrading of property values. It is anticipated that the development will have a positive effect on neighborhood and property values. 4, compatibility with existing surrounding structures and uses. The proposed development is consistent with the surrounding uses and as well as being in line with the general plan, providing a wider variety of housing options. 5, adequate control of disruptive behavior from both sides and outside the premises. The proposed housing development geared towards professionals will not have this impact on the neighborhood. Additionally, the minimal number of parking spaces provided for guests and the location of these spaces behind the building and out of sight of the right-of-way will discourage the use of these spaces by non-guests, something that I have faced throughout my time at 1402. Per the general plan, the site is anticipated to be residential. Though approximately half the site is zoned CSS, the proposed development complies with the general plan, and this development is a good step in the right direction towards the 2040 vision. Since the future of the site, per the general plan, is intended to be residential, the proposed 37-foot building height the applicant is seeking a use permit for complies with the residential height allowance of 40 feet. Additionally, the general plan calls for this site to have a maximum of 65 dwelling units per acre. The proposed 22.9 dwelling units per acre is well under the requirement and is more consistent with the surrounding complexes. The last goal of the general plan that I would like to point out is that it calls for Tempe to be more walkable and accessible by transit. Given the target purchasers previously mentioned, the site is highly walkable for the professionals as it is nearby transit, thus further reducing the impact on traffic in the area. I'm thankful as a resident that this is going to be a low-density condominium complex as more dense uses are permitted by right in a CSS district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Sam Malkati. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
Sam Malakuti, residing at 7230 South Hazelton Lane in Tempe, 85283. I am a retired civil engineer. You guys must have lined him up, a freshman civil engineer. I'm a retired civil engineer. And also, I am a board member of the Delario condominiums, which is adjacent property to the west. We have met and discussed the project, the Muse, with the developers and Wendy, and they have been very cooperative to understand our needs, questions, concerns. And generally speaking, however, this, as many of speakers have talked about, and I'm glad to see there's so many supporters, and we were disappointed DRC not approve it. That this vacant site has been there for decades. We have an opportunity to build a beautiful project. I think we should go forward with it. This vacant site has been used for basically is a place for dust and dumping, and also cut-throughs that some people just cut through our property, through this property to get to Apache Boulevard because there's no direct access. So there's some security safety issue as well that we experience. So this project would help us with that. As a civil engineer, traffic engineer, I see the 16 units being much appropriate for this location, especially knowing that the project can access only from Spence and not from Apache Boulevard, and that traffic volume would be a lot worse if we go with the alternative of 45, 60 units. So 16 residential, single family, I think is perfect for this place, and I think this would actually increase the property values locally for everybody else, including myself. But we urge you, and we have few board members here on the Delario. We have met and discussed this and unanimously approved to support it. So we urge you guys to approve it. Thank you, Council Mayor.
Thank you. Next is Jim Serena.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff members, my name is Jim Serena from Gilbert. My wife, Michelle, who you'll hear a little later, are owners of the property right next, 1026 East Spence, Tempe Palms. I attended the hearing last month and spoke in opposition for the requested use permits and setbacks because of the impact on our property. Note that I didn't object to the development of the property. In fact, I'm quite in favor of it because an empty lot is obviously not as good as a good development. But the Development Review Commission conducted a fair hearing on the merits of the proposal and denied the use permits. Note that the chairwoman explicitly asked the applicant if he wanted to continue the discussion, and he said no, and at that point the vote was taken and it was denied. So there's no basis for this appeal before this commission, before this council. if we want to discuss this, the merits, I'd be more than willing to do it. I'm not going to talk about the substance of everything we've heard, because I don't think that's the purpose of this council. This is an appeal on what the commission said. And so I think if we want to discuss this further on the merits of the subject, we should return it to the Development and Review Commission. I ask the council to dismiss this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Raj Campbell. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
Yes, my name is Raj Campbell. I'm a real estate agent. I've been a real estate agent for about almost 4 years now. I bought 5 properties from Joe Reese. I think that they were real beautiful properties when I went to go look at them. Me and my family invested in 5 of them. The properties were, they were called the Newports. And in my opinion, they kind of took us outside of Arizona. It was kind of illuminating for our city to purchase those. The people that we bring in love them, and they're warm. They're site and good property. So my thing is, I think Joe Reese. I'm pretty new to this new development, but I think Joe Reese has a lot of creativity, and he could do good to the city. And so I hope he gets his project passed, and I stand behind him.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next, Nick Adamakis. Did I say that correctly?
Sir.
I did?
You did.
All right, hard to do.
Good evening, Mayor. Yeah, exactly.
Well, a lot of it's legibility too, but actually I can read this one.
Yeah. Good evening, council members, Mayor. I'm here to speak on behalf of Joe Reese on this very interesting project. I've had the opportunity this morning to kind of review all the notes and all the comments from the DRC and all the legalese and things and so forth. And for me, it's a simple question. The question is, in this time where ASU is expanding, and I must say I do work at ASU and I am a little biased with that, there's tremendous innovation going on, not only from an academic perspective, but also from a business perspective, which is the growth of this community. And their impact has been tremendous. So you see this athletic facilities project that's happening at the district is going to draw immense demand for housing, and that demand has to be met. I personally would not want to live in a condominium or in an apartment per se, but I would like to live in a home, in a house that I own, that I can call my place of residency. So I also own a home in Tempe, which Mr. Reese built, the Newport Tempe, and it's a home that I can live in. And so the more housing that you can provide that is standalone or that is by owner, the more value I think this community will have, because it will bring more diversity. It will also impact and lessen the traffic burden that we have. Every day we drive down University and Rural, and you know how bad it is in the mornings and evenings. You cannot get in and you cannot get out. I know this is not a very big project, but when I looked at all the notes this morning, I do not understand why this committee declined the slight variations to be able to put this project in place, which I think is a very fantastic, innovative, and sustainable project. And I'm here to ask for your support in making this appeal be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Serena.
Thank you for allowing me the time here to speak my opinion. I'm the owner of Tempe Palms Apartments, which is to the east of the property, 1026 East Spence Avenue. I've owned that property for many years, and I'm not opposed at having having that lot developed. I think that's a great idea. I think that's important. However, is that there's strengths and standards that you put in place before, and you seem to kind of wiggle worm these standards, and so it kind of changes the original rule place that you put in for the city itself. You have a certain standard. The reason why I've come to these council meetings and have debated against it is because I do not like the additional the setback that they want to do on closer to my property. They said that I have a variance. My property is like 40 years old. That was the standard back in the day. You've come across the city of Tempe and has changed those standards throughout the years because you felt that there was a necessary division or space between buildings. And now, once again, we're going to be changing that variance. That's the issue that I have there for privacy issues, for keeping the standard that the city originally puts in. He has an irregular piece of property, and he's trying to put a very high density on that property, which is fine. But yet, you know, if you don't have to change and get variances on the setbacks, I'm much more appeased to that than to have all the 2%, the 2 feet setback closer to my property or fanning out. I'm glad to see that Joe has a lot of good supporting friends to come to his rally. But yet, you know, we also have to look at, we have standards, and we put those standards in the city of Tempe. And I think the city of Tempe, as you grow, you need to continue to keep your standards and stop, you know, making variances along the way, because it kind of lessens the overall plan of the city. You know, you have to have a line and say, okay, this is where did we put these in, and this is the way it should be, because especially with high density, and you keep moving the privity lines closer and closer to each other, you have no privacy. So, you know, building the lot is fine with me. That's why I was surprised that we're even up here, because last time you didn't want to appeal it, and all of a sudden now nothing has changed, but we're at a higher level. Really, I thought that there would be a change in the contract or change in his settings or the project, and go back to a lesser visibility council to have it resolved at that level than at a city council level. So, so that's the reason why I'm up here to uphold the city's own standards. And there's a reason for those standards. And I have a problem with the setback. That's the only reason. But I do desire to see something built on the property. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. That's all the cards I have. But this is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6A1? Could you please get my attention? Mr. Reese. I mean, this is just a comment. I mean, after you go ahead and you can speak on behalf of yourself, obviously, but we're going to have council discussion, and then if we need any more information, we can ask those questions.
Joseph Reese, 1020 Spence. I was born and raised in Phoenix, in Sunny Slope, Arizona, 16th Avenue in Hatcher, by my immigrant Italian mother, who was a single mother and a waitress at Helsing's restaurant on the corner of Central and Camelback. She worked the swing shift and got home about midnight, so I was free to roam around glorious Sunny Slope until about that time, and she got home. And needless to say, we didn't have a cotillion class in Sunny Slope, you know, back then. And I say this because, you know, I reflect back on the last time I stood before you all on the 9th and Wilson case. It was kind of been referred to earlier tonight as the 9th and Wilson hangover. And for my part, I came to really apologize for my lack of decorum and aggressive behavior and rudeness in front of the council. Obviously, things can get heated at councils. We've seen some tonight, and we can see them in probably every hearing. But, you know, I was just lecturing my sons in high school the other day about respect for offices, public offices, and not needing to necessarily like the person, but respecting the office. And I respect your office and the service that you give to the city of Tempe. It's a difficult job, and it's controversial at best. I do care very much about the city of Tempe, always have, and you know some of the things I've done in the past. And I want to continue to work here, and I want to work here with a good relationship, not only with the council, but with neighbors. In the case of this project, the Muse, I have gone out there, you know, door to door, and spent a lot of time talking to people that I didn't know and trying to let them know what I hope to do, and we got a lot of support. And I thank everybody that came tonight for taking time out of your evening to speak on behalf of the support of that project. But again, I particularly want to apologize to you, Lauren, because I did get very aggressive and rude with you in the last meeting. I feel bad about it. So I beg your forgiveness on that. I just want to make one comment about what I call the "I got mine now, you can't have yours" syndrome that we as developers seem to run into. There were lesser setback criteria back some years ago when the other condominiums were built to the east of us. But they have a 6-foot setback on their yard. So they're saying, we have our 6 foot, but we don't want you to have an 8-foot setback, because that was a criteria then, but this is a criteria now, and we don't believe that any city should bend any policy or rules in place at any time, because that's why they're in place. But we know that there has to be flexibility, and that's what variances are about, that's what use permits are about. It's taking a look at various situations. You can't be static, you can't be rigid. There has to be an adaptation for every property, because every property has its own unique character. This property is very, very site constrained, and in particular with the new ordinances that come into play relative to sanitation and fire services. With that in place, and the diagrams that you've seen demonstrated earlier today, there were only 2 diagrams that would physically fit on our property, and one of them would absorb so much property you'd only be able to build 8 units on a property that has a general plan overlay of 45 units. Now we're proposing less than half of the general plan, and we think it's the best use, as well as I think you've heard the neighbors say they agree with that. They like to see the less density, they like the for sale housing, and I'm happy to provide that for them. I think this is something that's needed today, and I do ask for your support, and I thank you for hearing all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the public comments. I open up any questions from the council. Councilman Shapiro.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Reese, I just want you to know all the other meetings, the decorum is awesome. It's just the ones you attend that are crazy. I think you have some. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I do want to say though, for me personally, I don't vote yes or no on a project based on, the person who's bought it or the attitude they have or how they interact with the council. It's the strength of the project and the impact on the neighborhood and the opinions of the folks in the surrounding areas. And, your last project was ugly. I mean, we talked about that. It was really ugly. And that was really the reason I voted no on that one. But we're here to talk about this one tonight. And I just want you to know, I hold no ill will, and it's I look at each project individually based on the issues of that project.
Councilman Navarro, and then Councilmember Keating.
No, thank you, Mayor. Now, once again, and just a little feedback, obviously, every project is unique, and every project has momentum in each area. And looking at the merits of this project, understanding the constraints, understanding, what the property is now and how it's been sitting there for a long period of time, this is a great project. And I think this council really does enjoy, and I have enjoyed with Joe, knowing that we do enjoy having people being able to buy property or being able to buy a condo or a townhouse. And that's been really important to me. And I really do value that, because that has value within our community for a variety of different reasons. So I will be supporting this project, and I think it's good. Thank you.
Councilmember Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't talk a lot up here, but when I do, I'm usually talking about the need for more housing in the city of Tempe. That's something that I've harped on repeatedly over my 1.5 years on council. I happen to agree with everything that Mr. Amorosi said during his public comments, but I was just wondering, could we get some insight into why the DRC rejected this project from Mr. Amorosi or from yourself? I mean, just why was this such a close vote? Why wasn't it? It seems like a high quality project in what is a dirt lot right now. So I'm confused on what the merits of the case are. Thank you.
To Councilmember Keating's question, I think if Chad Weaver and Ryan can answer that for you.
Mayor and Council, I don't know how specifically I can answer that. As the minutes indicate, there was some discussion about some general design deficiencies or perceived deficiencies. The general layout of the driveway in the middle, and you've heard the applicant explain why that is necessary in their view, and the use permits for slight reductions in the setback also came up. So many of the things that have been discussed tonight were cited generally as some of the reasons perhaps for the no votes.
Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor, then Councilman Randall.
Cool. Mrs. Rydell, thank you very much for your presentation. I really do appreciate it. I mean, I just want to clarify a couple of things because I'm not really positive. And I know we had gotten some feedback, not only that from here tonight, so I really do appreciate the neighbors coming and giving us the feedback and let us know how they feel. But also we got some emails too, so I think that's always really helpful and we welcome that. There was one thing I wanted to clarify, because I know you didn't catch it, but it is in the materials about the parking. Some people were concerned about parking, but it is my understanding that you're at code when it comes to parking, or actually one parking stall above
5.
code?
I could, Mayor. We are actually 5 parking stalls above exceeding code requirements.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I thought that's what I got. Now, and I don't know if this is where I need to ask you or Chad, if I need to ask you. I know there were some original conditions, and I want to know if those original conditions are part of this appeal process, or if you can talk a little bit about that.
Stipulations?
I believe we're looking at the conditions that were part of the DRC, right?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. When this matter was brought forward to the DRC, staff had made a recommendation of approval with certain conditions for both the use permit and for the development review. And council's options would be to consider an approval of the appeal with modified or added conditions, or the conditions that staff has recommended.
So I guess my question to you then, Ms. Rydell, are you okay with those original conditions that the staff brought forward? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, so I want to make sure I got all my questions answered, because I do know, and I went back and did the checking in regards to you guys actually did submit the apartment complex that you talked about before, and then went back to the drawing board to really try to find, I think, a product, a development that would really create some synergy within that area. And I will be the first one to say, I think that one of the things that we need to make sure we continue to do is try to find diverse housing stock. And I think one of the housing stocks that's been challenging for us is homeownership. So I'm always really very interested and usually super supportive when it comes to the ability to have more for sale type of product. And the one thing I would ask is, obviously it's a for sale type of product, and I'm hopeful if there's anything that can possibly be done, or at least maybe we could talk about, the idea of not renting them, not having people buy them to rent out, but hopefully to actually have people purchase them to live in them. And I know we can't tie your hands to make you do that, but I would like to kind of get some feedback and to know what your guys' thoughts are to be able to stay consistent with that.
Certainly, Mayor. I can tell you all along, the idea here is to sell the product. I mean, this is not something that Mr. Reese intends to retain and rent. We can certainly have a discussion. It's as you know, a tricky dance between what can be enforced, fair housing, and those types of rules, but about trying to restrict rental. But to be very clear, the objective here is for sale housing.
Right. And if I could tie your hands, I would, but I know I can't. So what I'll say is, first and foremost, I really just want to thank the neighbors for coming out and stepping up and telling us, how they feel about it and what it means to them in their neighborhood. And for you guys going back to the drawing board and finding something that I think is really a good fit for the area and for our Tempe community and some of the things that we are trying to fill. So I really do appreciate that, and I like the product. In fact, we have a product fairly similar, not too far from my house, and I think it's done really well, and it looks really nice. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be supporting this agenda item tonight, and I appreciate you guys for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Councilman Granville.
Thank you, Mayor. So first off, I'd just say, Mr. Reese, thank you for the comments that you made. They're not necessary. We all have very thick skin. I think we're required to have these positions. So we don't take any of it too personally, but it's a appreciated gesture. And I think the project's great. And I think the thing that I would want you to know, and for you to know, Mr. Reese, is that regardless of whether we all like or dislike or agree or disagree with anyone, that everyone's going to have their project looked at, not the person or whatever, right? Like that's irrelevant to the discussion. And I would say to our neighbors, that's particularly a credit to the neighbors, that there are neighbors here who opposed the last project who are in support of this project. So I think that's also a testament to our neighbors that they're willing to say, look, we just want good work. We want neighborhoods we want to live in. And so I think it's a great project. I commend the work that you all did working with neighbors. And if we got 5 more like this, I would be thrilled.
Thank you.
Councilman Cubie?
So I appreciate what you had to say, Mr. Reese. And you brought up the elephant in the room, that there's been a lot of discord in the neighborhood over on Mitchell Park, Maple Ash, Wilson Arts Garden District, and the project was entitled Harmony afterwards, so that kind of was a double-edged sword. But I realize that when it comes right down to it, it's about neighborhood support and approval, and I don't think it was there in that original project, and we're not talking about the original project, but it's clear to me that the support is here, and it's been through a very strong and robust process with the neighborhood, and I appreciate that. I wish that had been done earlier, wasn't with the other project, but we're not here to talk about that one. So I will be voting in support of it, and hope that this property won't get flipped. Promise me it won't get flipped. Now I know. Thank you.
All right, and I concur with a lot of the comments that are here tonight, but before we move forward, and I get council's options, this is quasi-judicial, so the first item that we need to take action on is the use permit appeal. So I will say that if to approve the appeal of the DRC's decision, that will find in favor of the appellant and effectively approve the use permit. If you approve the appeal of the DRC's decision with modified or added conditions, then the original, then it will, my understanding is that the denial did not come with conditions from the DRC, so we need to be careful how we make that motion on the first part, because we're going to have to take this in two separate parts. If you deny the appeal of the DRC's decision and find in favor of the DRC, then you basically will deny the use permit. If there's 5 different options, and then you can, on the first question that we have to take action on. We are, but the first action, there's 5 different ways you can do it, and that's why I'm explaining it, so when we make your motion. If you want to move to continue the project to a future date, there's a certain date, requesting additional information before making a final decision on the appeal, or if you want to remand it back to the DRC for further consideration on the use permit issues. So those are the conditions for the first question that I will be asking for a motion on. And if I need to repeat it, I will. So the approve the appeal of the DRC's decision will find in favor of the appellant and effectively approve the use permit. If you approve the appeal of the DRC's decisions with modified or added conditions, I think Vice Mayor Hernando has some questions on that, because if you appeal the DRC's decision with modified or added conditions, because the denial did not come with conditions, the original report contains staff's the initial conditions that the DRC effectively denied the use permit. So you just got to make sure that you quantify the conditions moving forward in anyone's motion, if that makes sense.
Make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion for approval.
Vice Mayor, you have to do it a certain way, if you want to approve it.
Right. Mayor, I would like to move approval of agenda item 6A1 with
No,
incorporation.
you can't say that, that's right.
No.
So the original motion.
There's too many.
This is for the use permit appeal.
Yes, I want to approve the use permit appeal
Okay?
Without conditions.
with the original staff conditions. Can I say that?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, my goodness.
So the motion is to approve the appeal of the DRC's decision, and you want to add the conditions of the original staff conditions and appeal. Right?
Yes.
Did I get that correctly, Ms. Attorney?
Yes.
Judy? Okay, so it's been moved by Vice Mayor Arredondo Savage, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Shapira, but we have a question.
I have a question. Do you understand
I'm
Because I'm not comfortable yet.
not gonna lie, you lost me a little bit in there. I believe if I'm reading the tea leaves, the objective for the council is to approve the appeal, approve the new
conditions.
development review plan and use permits with staff conditions. So if that's what we're doing, then
Oh, wait, hang on.
Excuse me, one comment, Mayor. Just for clarification on the record, we thought it might be useful to go ahead and take the use permits separately. So
That's
the
why I
first
did-
vote
that's
here
why I
is
said it the way I
for,
said it.
and I think I heard it,
Probably not clear.
approval of the appeal with the conditions as enumerated by staff at the DRC.
thank you.
All right, so then There's been a motion and it's seconded by Councilmember Shapiro. Please vote. That motion carries 7-0. Now, I need to get a motion on the development plan review appeal. So we just talked about the use permit appeal. Now we're talking about the development plan review appeal.
I might get it right in a second. With, we need to include the
Do we need to
decisions?
include the stipulation? You do, I think.
Do we need to do it again?
Yep, you have to do it the same way.
All right, let me just make a motion.
It's your option to include the conditions that staff had recommended at the DRC. You also have the option to modify or choose not to include those.
Vice Mayor Erdano Savage. Or Councilmember
Okay.
Keating, either one.
Doesn't matter. Okay, thank you, Mayor. I would like to move
Right here. To approve.
to approve the development plan review appeal with the original staff conditions in the report.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Erdano Savage, seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. That motion passes 7-0. All right. What's up? That's it. Next item, item 6A2, is to approve the utilization of a 2-year City of Tucson contract with Panasonic Systems Communications Company of North America and Group Mobile for mobile computing solutions, including ruggedized laptops, tablets, accessories, and related technology, products, and services for the fire department, police department, and other city departments on an as-needed basis. Is there any comments or discussion under item 6A2? If not, I look for a motion on item 6A2. Moved by Councilmember Keating, seconded by Councilmember Shapiro. That motion passes 7-0. Next item, item 6A3, is to award a construction contract to AJP Electric Incorporated for the construction of the Highline Canal multi-use path located from the Mineral Road alignment south to the Knox Road alignment. Now, I have to mention this. A protest has been filed against this award of a construction contract. Staff has reviewed the protest and bid materials and sees no reason to delay the award of the construction contract. Also note that this is, I just want to make everybody know, this is not a public hearing item. And so we cannot take public comments on this, but I'd like to ask my council colleagues, is there any comments or discussion under item 6A3? Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't think it'd hurt just to have a little more information and have this pulled for next council meeting to vote on, just to get some information on this a little bit more thoroughly. That's a motion to pull it and postpone it for next meeting.
Continue.
A continuation.
Unless staff is prepared to talk about it.
I'd like to get more material.
All right, so there's been a motion to continue item 6A3 to our next formal council meeting. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. The motion carries 6-1 with Councilman Granville voting no. Next section of the non-consent agenda is ordinance and items for introduction and first hearing. These items will be read and introduced tonight, but no votes will be taken. The second hearing of these items are scheduled for February 8th. Item 6B1 is introduced to hold a first public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the exchange of real property and parking rights between Mill Avenue Retail LLC and the City of Tempe, and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute associated agreements, addendas, conveyances, and other related documents. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for February 8th, 2018. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6B1? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, close that portion. Next item is item 6B2. Is to introduce and hold a first public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the Community Development Director or his designee to execute an airspace easement agreement for special use of the city property pursuant to section 29-19B of the Tempe City Code, allowing the balcony and building facade constructed as part of the local development located at 204 West University Drive to occupy the space above the adjacent city right-of-way. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for February 8th, 2018. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6B2? Seeing none, close that portion of the public hearing item. Next item is item 6B3, is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a zoning map amendment from CSS TOD to MU-4 TOD, a planned area development overlay and development plan review consisting of a new 5-story mixed-use development containing 285 units and commercial uses for Park Place located at 1201 East Apache Boulevard. The applicant is Humantel and Affiliates. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for February 8, 2008. This is a public hearing item. The applicant, would you like to make a statement to start?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, for the record, Charles Humanel on behalf of the applicant of the PowerPoint. I know it's already been a long and interesting evening, so I'll try to be brief. This is the first of 2 hearings, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you might have. The site is an area I know all of you are familiar with. It's on the south side of Apache, on both sides of Terrace. This is a really unique opportunity to recreate what happens in this area, to create both sides of the street. This case was heard recently by the DRC. It was approved unanimously, and I appreciate Mr. Amorosi's comments earlier today. We've worked hard to accommodate any number of interests, including the streetcar, light rail, and the neighborhood. Most of this site, as you probably know, has been vacant or partially vacant for some time. These are some existing conditions. We have worked really hard to figure out how to both address what happens on Apache, which is an important both vehicular, multimodal transportation, and pedestrian corridor, and do the same on Terrace without changing the feel of the neighborhood. You can tell that this project is in general conformance with exists today. Nexa is the project on the left in gray. The project we're talking about here today is in the lighter color. The project does have a significant amount of retail. We also have a little plaza area that helps us deal with the triangle. It's a pretty odd-shaped piece of land to have a triangle come with almost no land to 2 different kinds of multimodal transportation, both the light rail and the streetcar. Presented some interesting challenges, so we worked hard with your staff and ultimately with people like Gil Amorosi in the neighborhood and the DRC to come up with a plan that would work well. I would also point out that Delish or Delight, they've changed their name a number of times, is planned to be back in the building when we're done. We've offered them an opportunity to come back. And you can see that we've provided retail space, which is wide but narrow, but not deep along the frontage. We've gone through a number of versions of this building, and I'm just going to kind of run through them because I know you've already had a long evening. Happy to go back and show you some of the different things that changed. But we changed really everything from the unit configuration to the look of the building as we worked with your staff. This is an image that I do want to stop on. One of the important things that we've done is put bike storage, indoor bike storage along Terrace to give it a commercial feel without having the additional traffic that commercial often brings. We've also worked through many bridge designs. The bridge over Terrace is designed to bring people from one set of amenities to another. And you can see we've had various versions of them and ended up here. I'm happy to spend more time talking about all this, but I know this is the first read, and typically presentations are shorter. Are there questions in particular that I could answer, or are there things you'd like me to talk about in greater detail?
Vice Mayor Donna Savage and Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. Humantel. I know we've had an opportunity to talk a little bit, but I'm hoping that we can just review some of the things that we had discussed a little bit earlier and just to reassure me on a few things. As my council colleagues know, one of the things that we've been working on in a working group is our student housing working group. And we're really close to be able to bring it back to the council for some approval with some great recommendations. So I'd like to talk to you a little about some of those recommendations that we have agreed to in the working group, which did include not only us, the police department, the fire department, but also ASU PD, ASU Student Services, and of course their community development offices too. So it's my understanding that I know you've had a conversation with ASU, but the people within the community development, and have a meeting scheduled with student services very soon?
Yeah, we, at the request of your staff early on, we asked for a meeting with ASU. We had one. It was with ultimately the real estate folks, but when we met, you asked us to meet instead with Jim Rund. We've scheduled a meeting with Jim Rund before our next meeting here. Chris is going to join us as well. He's the applicant, the developer. So we'll be meeting with Jim Rund before we see you again.
Good. And I will tell you this too. I think one of the things that we've learned when it comes to our student housing projects, some of the most successful projects have an early on partnership with ASU from the very beginning, whatever that might look like. That's really encouraged a lot of more safety elements, and I think just the idea of having that connection with ASU and some oversight from them, whatever that might look like, would be highly encouraged. For me, because I think if that's something that doesn't come forward, that's going to be an issue for me. And also, one of the things that we would probably bring forward in it'd be, and I don't know if the police department actually had not said that you wanted to do this, but to do a security plan. I mean, in my mind, I think in any student housing project, it's really important that we do incorporate a security plan. I don't know if that's something that you are planning to
Absolutely.
do. I would highly encourage that to happen also, and make sure that you work with our police department, ASU police department, to make sure that we're following some of the things that we're going to be suggesting in
We
the
absolutely
housing recommendation.
plan to do that, and I also might note that some of the changes that you saw throughout the time happened based on the recommendations that ASU has made. The height of the building, we would like to have been taller. We didn't because ASU asked us not to. The balcony configurations are much different as a result of ASU's request. They asked us not to have 5-bedroom units. We don't. So the things that ASU has said they're looking for.
That's what happens when you work with the real estate people, right? So now we're working with the students that are inside. And
No,
I
this
think
is
that's
actually
why,
from Jim Rund's original comments in general on student housing, not from.
oh, just in general, the ones, yeah, right. We have those within the working group too, for sure. That was some of the things that we kind of agreed to, but not necessarily wholeheartedly. But yes, that, to me, I mean, those are the two things that I'll definitely be looking for is whatever that partnership look like with ASU when you come back for the second hearing, and hopefully working with the police department to create that security plan. I mean, that's going to be really important too.
We'll certainly do that. I'm comforted the police chief is not behind me as she was with
she
other
is behind
speakers,
you,
so,
and I've tried to say it very loudly, but she knows, and actually she was a part of our student housing working group too, and I think really understands the importance and I think some of the safety factors that are incorporated within a security plan and the difference that it has made in some of the student housing projects, the private student housing projects for sure. So those are the things that I'll be looking for. I got to say, I think the one thing that I really like about this project is that you're not going to lose that restaurant, because I like to go to Delish, Delete, whatever you want to call it. They have great breakfast, so I really definitely am glad that that's going to stay part of it. And I do like the walkway between the two buildings. I think that's a really great idea to, as we talk about traffic and some of the issues that we're having, is to actually be able to take pedestrians off of the street and try to move them in a different manner. So this, to me, fits in with what we're trying to do when it comes to addressing, pedestrian bikes and traffic patterns. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll be prepared to discuss that more in the next meeting.
Nice.
Councilman Navarro?
Thank you, Mary. No, I definitely appreciate the comments that Councilmember Ardona Savage had. Obviously, with all our student housing, we try to make sure safety and security and all those things are consistent, not only for this project, for every project that's kind of related to student housing. So I think we definitely, if we have not formalized that process, we should definitely be formalizing the process that we use for every student housing project. One thing I like to say is I do appreciate the bike and the bike lockers, or the bike shop, so to speak, and obviously with the increased use of our bike rental, what do they call them? Bike shares, grid or whatever. It just, with a complex like this, and probably as we start developing in and around this area, having the ability to lock up those bikes, or having areas, I guess, as you know, they can just place them anywhere. But I kind of challenge you to be a little mindful of that for allowing maybe some of those spaces. I don't know. It's such a new problem. I just foresee this, as I got back from China a long time ago, that it was ginormous problem out there. There was just bikes everywhere, but just something to think about in terms of the bike shares.
We have plenty of places for bikes, and we also have a plaza, so we'll work to incorporate that. And obviously, we care about the safety of our residents at least as much, if not more, than anyone else. It's important to us as well. So we hear both of you on those comments.
Wait, I had him, sorry. Councilman Granville, then Councilman Cubey.
Yeah, I just want to say, I assume that, and if this hasn't been a part of discussions yet, they shall work with PD for a crime-free multifamily housing designation. I know you well enough to know that you probably are doing that without me even saying it, but that'll be something I'll look for. I really, by the way, love the fact that you've put the bikes in the front as a window. I think it adds to the culture. It sort of projects the image that we want. And if someday that space you want to turn into something else, you can do that, right? But you don't end up with the situation of what we have on the southeast corner of Apache and McClintock, where it's got to be going on 8-9 years now. They haven't even seemingly tried to rent out that space. And so Grigio, yeah. And so I love that you're doing this. I think it's a great project, and I'm glad to see it moving forward.
Senator Cubey.
Since it's been a while since we looked at the project, can you remind me whether there's plans to do an energy model of the building prior to its development? Or can we maybe talk at another time about that?
I'll be prepared to answer that in greater detail for the next council hearing, but we're doing a number of environmentally sensitive things, including the roof deck and some water harvesting. So I'll be prepared to talk about that.
Thanks. I mean, you've always really had that uppermost in mind, and I appreciate that, but just wanted to refresh about that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the item that we just mentioned? This is a public hearing. You can do so now. It is. All right, we'll go ahead and close that portion. Next item is item 6B2, is to introduce, 6B4, excuse me, is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a zoning map amendment from R1 to 6 to R5 and a planned area development overlay and public hearing to adopt a resolution authorizing a general plan projected density map amendment for medium to high density to and the development plan review for a new multifamily development consisting of 276 dwelling units for Alliance Broadstone Rio Salado located at 2325 East Rio Salado Parkway. The applicant is Humantel and Affiliates. Second and final public hearing is scheduled for February 8th, 2018. Mr. Humantel, this is a public hearing as well.
I'll be likewise brief in this case if I can. Just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up. This is a piece that I think everybody who's been in Tempe for any length of time knows. It has been previously known as the ASU Salvage Yard, and it is on the corner of Price and Rio Salado. It's a particularly challenging site, not only because of the freeway and the freeway overpass, but also Rio Salado. And so the access to this site is much more difficult than most sites you might see. The site is less than attractive at the moment and has been for some time, but we think we can change that and turn this piece of property into a pretty usable piece of residential property. And what we're proposing is a building that looks like this. We've used a number of materials that we've used on 2 other projects we've done on Tempe. The closest is the one at First and Farmer. If you've been by recently, that project is moving along quickly, and a lot of the same materials have been used. We also tried to draw from the Cubs Park across the street. You can see the archway and other things are a green metal that's similar to the stadium across the street. You can see that a lot of the surface is this simulated wood product that we've used, again, in 2 other projects in Tempe. We've used a stone material on the base of the building and tried to really articulate the building as much as we can, given the fairly narrow access along Rio Salado. It's not a particularly wide site. So we have a building on each side, a nice entryway, and then inside the building, inside the development, I should say, we have rather attractive amenities, a pretty amazing pool setup. And I can answer other questions. I know this is the first read, and normally that's a shorter presentation. I know it's getting later. Are there things in particular I can address?
All right, any comments from the council? Vice Mayor?
I always have comments, sorry. Just a couple of things. And I think, we talked a little bit about materials and, I'm going to go by that project that you mentioned and check that out and see. Because I kind of feel like we want to make this really a high-standing quality product because there's really nothing else there. And we'll set a really good standard, I think, moving forward, too. I worry a little bit about the pedestrian walk experience. It just seems so, I can't really even quite pinpoint it either. So I need to kind of work through that a little bit, but I am really worried about traffic. I mean, that's a lot of people coming in there. How are they going to get in and out? I mean, that's really, to be able to get out and turn left. Are you any concerns about that?
We would build a very different building if we could. I think that your staff would do the same. Unfortunately, in this particular case, neither of us have that luxury because this is it's called an ADOT facility, and so one of the conditions that you'll see in the staff report is that we have to work through ADOT's requirements. And ADOT has been good to work with us, but pretty demanding in terms of what their priorities are.
Are those your bike racks you're going to use back there, that last slide?
We were thinking about it. We certainly have. In fact, we can find a couple of other places we can put them. So we can put
the little bike barn in the back?
Right. The struggle for us on this particular piece of property is, in fact, access. We think we found a way that works well for everyone. We have two entrances. One is along Price, and the other is along Rio Salado. So the truth is that we think that a lot of the folks that are going to live here are choosing here because they're in between two locations. For example, a couple might have somebody who works in Scottsdale, another partner who lives in Chandler or South Tempe, or works, I should say. And so they might go in different directions. We think that most of our access will be on Price. Price actually has an incredible amount of ability left to put cars on. It is nowhere near capacity. The capacity remaining is significant. In fact, it's built as 2 lanes and almost never uses it. Rio Salado, we have very limited access, as is our pedestrian access, and that's because Tempe doesn't control it. ADOT does. And so we have done what ADOT has asked us to do. ADOT brought up a really interesting point, actually, as you talk about pedestrian access. One of the reasons we ran into issues is because it's called Rio Salado Parkway. And ADOT brought up that parkway isn't an accidental term, it's a thing. And if it's a thing, a parkway is not a pedestrian location, it's more of a freeway or a parkway. And they suggested, and I'll pass on the suggestion to you, that if you want this to be a pedestrian area, you might call it something other than a parkway. We had quite the challenge convincing them that this was a pedestrian area, and frankly, we got a lot more out of it than they wanted to give us. So it's an improvement over what ADOT would like, but it will, until you change the name, always be sort of limited as to what ADOT will allow on a parkway.
What's that setback there? Because it does look really close to the roadway, especially on the west side of the building in the front.
Let me just go to another image that's a little easier to see. I'm not sure totally which one you're talking about, but you'll see when you see the overall site plan.
When you're closer to the 101, it obviously is a little bit closer as the road is a little wider there. You can see it.
Yep. So you can see that what we have done is put the buildings in the center and tried to put parking around the edges. Now, some of those parking locations actually have carriage units or one story above the parking, but the vast number of units are in the center intentionally to keep them both away from the freeway and away from the residential project further to the east.
I gotcha. Well, I appreciate you pointing out that other entry over on, that makes a big difference for me. I don't know why I didn't catch that before, so I appreciate you pointing that out.
Just happy you're happy now.
Quick question.
That's good.
Councilman Kiwi?
Any plans to put solar on the parking, above the parking areas?
I'll address that in the next meeting. I'll have to talk to my client about that.
No.
That is not in the plans now, no.
It looks a great project. I mean, obviously, Alliance is a quality developer. The only concern I have, and I asked the other day when we saw each other, that what's the size, how many units? The density really kind of concerns me, only because you're going from medium high to high density. The traffic is going to be, it's brutal there, especially in about another month, it's really going to be bad because of spring training. But more importantly, though, just in general, just the traffic on Rio Salado, by increasing the density, obviously you're going to increase vehicle traffic. And I was looking at it. Do you have a traffic analysis on this?
We do. Yeah, we've shared it with your staff and with ADOT. We've actually had two separate versions of analysis done because of ADOT's control of the access ways. First, I would say, we hope that it's a busy season. We want the Cubs to do well. If it's not busy, that means the Cubs aren't playing well. We
Regardless if they're good, they're always busy.
Well, we'll see. We think that a lot of our residents are really going to focus on the freeway, but we know that this is really one of two things. We believe that it's either going to be something like what we've proposed, which is multifamily, or it would be commercial, because it's right against the freeway. It's not single-family land. If it were a commercial property of this size, you'd probably have significantly more traffic generated than a residential project. We also think that the time of people living and coming in and out of these units would be helpful, but we can bring more information, and we can maybe ask for your traffic engineers to be present to discuss it as well. Obviously, they wouldn't have recommended approval for the project if it hadn't met their standards. In this case, we also had ADOT standards to meet, which are, I think, in some cases more stringent. It's also worth mentioning that there hasn't been any opposition to this case, and we were approved 7-0 at the DRC. One more thing. Mayor, you did ask me previously if there had been another development proposed on this site by ASU, and I said I didn't know the answer. I have since found out that there was previously another development, but it's not associated with myself or Mr. Lewis, who is an original Tempe resident.
Yeah. Councilman Navarro.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No, it was just listening to you talking about the density and traffic and stuff, and then again, I'm thinking about the streetcar and where we want to go and how far we want to grow, and actually how Mesa would love to have it go in there, and we struggled in prior years because we didn't have the density, we didn't have the capacity to get federal funding. So it's kind of one of those things like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, but I think for what our master plan and where our future is kind of looking for, I think this is probably very appropriate.
I think thank you, we appreciate that. I think if you look at other projects around town, with this amount of land having 276 units, we think that it's a good amount of space to do this. We have pretty significant amenities. You mentioned the Alliance product. It's well known not only here, but in the rest of the country. We're fortunate that it's based here, but they do product everywhere. And they wouldn't build a product if they didn't believe that it would function well, if they thought it would be too crowded or that the traffic would be too significant for its residents. They wouldn't build it, because ultimately they're the ones that take the risk.
Yep. Anyone else have any comments? This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6B4? Could you please get my attention? Again, this is the first public hearing item. The second hearing would be held on February 8th. Closing that. Thank you. Next item is item 6B5, to introduce and hold a first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for the Tempe Historic Property Register listing and the historic overlay zoning for the Hayden Flour Mill. The applicant is the Iconic Mill, LLC. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for February 8th. This is a public hearing item. Would the applicant like to make a statement? No? Seeing none, is there any comments or discussion on item 6B5? Is there anyone in the public wishing to address item 6B5? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, close that portion. Next is, the next items on our agenda is scheduled for a second public hearing and final adoption, and they will be considered now. These items were read and introduced on December 14th, 2017, and votes will be taken tonight. Ordinance and items for second hearing, final adoption. Item 6C1 is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 22, Article 1 of the Tempe City Code, amending 22-4 relating to obstructing and interfering with the use of public ways. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C1? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I close that portion. Is there any comments or discussion from the council on item 6C1? I look for a motion on item 6C1.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Cubey. Please vote. That motion carries 7-0. Next item, item 6C2, is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 22, Article 1, Tempe City Code by amending Section 22.6 relating to hindering, interfering with police. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C2? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Is there any comments or discussion from the council on item 6C2? Yes? Oh, Councilman. Seeing none, is there a motion regarding item 6C2? Moved by Councilman Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. That motion passes 7-0. Next item is item 6C3, is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 22, Article 1, Tempe City Code by amending Section 22-12 relating to failure to provide information. The second and final public hearing, this is a public hearing audience. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us under item 6C3? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, is there any comments or discussion from the council under item 6C3 or a motion? It's been moved by Councilmember Keating. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Granville. Please vote. That motion passes 7-0. Item 6C4 is to hold a second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Article 4 of the Tempe City Code relating to urban camping by amending Sections 23-90 and 23-91. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address our council on this item? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, any comments or discussion from the council or a motion? Moved by Councilman Navarro, second by Councilmember Keating. Please vote. That motion passes 7-0. Next item on our agenda is our current events and council announcements and future agenda items. Councilmember Keating.
Nothing for me, Mayor, thank you. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
we have the roundtable with Randy and Robin coming up on Tuesday, January 23rd. And it will be at the Watershed in South Tempe off of Lakeshore Drive. And we'll be talking about kind of the health of the city, the things that the city's doing well, but we want to hear from you, the public. So please do join us. That's on the 23rd. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Keating.
I have a few. Okay. Calling for volunteers. On the 23rd of January, we're going to participate in a nationwide homeless point-in-time count, where we literally do a count of our homeless population and survey them and generally meet them and give out care bags as well. We're still looking for volunteers, and the information's all there, but call Kim Vanden Wiegen, our Homeless Solutions Coordinator, at 350-8856. And it's a very early start time. Don't be intimidated, because to see 80 or so of your fellow residents out in support of addressing homelessness is a very touching sight. Next, we have our energy goal, renewable energy goal. I'm in a working group with Councilmember Keating and Mayor Mitchell to consider extending our renewable energy goal. And we would like to hear from our residents. Last night we had a forum at the Pyle Center, and comments, the forum is still open online. If you go to tempe.gov/forum, please give your commentary. And there's a PowerPoint there that explains what we're doing and how we got to this impending decision. Then, this is sort of my other work life, working for the Global Institute of Sustainability, but really reflects well on our city, because we're bringing Jonathan Reckford in, the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, and he will speak about housing for inclusive and equitable cities. A lot of us believe that affordable housing is the main challenge that we face in our city. So I hope you'll come to the Tempe Center for the Arts, a beautiful Tempe Center for the Arts, where we'll host Jonathan Reckford, a true humanitarian, but someone who understands that housing is not just about the economy, but it's about the environment and about having a healthy society. So please join us. It's free. We just ask people to RSVP, and there'll be food provided as well. Thank you.
Councilman Navarro.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't know if we have a flyer for this, but doesn't look like it because, Parrish? No? No, okay. We have an event coming up not this Saturday, but next Saturday, the 27th, at 10 a.m. We'll be meeting at the new Tempe Public Market to have a discussion to really talk about the property across the street from the Tempe Public Market, the dirt property on the corner. It'd be the northwest corner of Warner and Rule, and basically talk about what that piece of land is, what are the constraints, regulations, history behind that land, and then look at any city code or ordinance, state laws, and just kind of see if there's opportunity for development over in that area. And then also to listen to the neighbors to see what type of development they would like to see, or what type of possibilities they would like to see in that area. I think in South Tempe we've had a number of different residents asking for what are we going to get here in South Tempe, or what are some of the things that the council can do for us to enjoy the area that we live in, so we don't have to feel like we have to go to downtown Tempe or somewhere else to have the entertainment. So we're going to take a conversation and kind of look at all the issues of that area. If we have some time, we're also going to have a conversation on the corner of Rule and Elliott, the old Walmart store, the vacant piece of property there, and just kind of really talk about, what are some ideas that could fill that occupants and provide a need for the area. So hope you can make it. It's going to be January 27th, Saturday at 10 a.m. At the Tempe Public Market.
Vice Mayor Hernando Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. I got the slide that Randy was talking about. Sorry, Randy, wasn't really sure. But there it is. You want to talk about it again? There it is. Yeah, so we hope everybody will come out January 23rd or January 29th. We're just really excited to do a little outreach to our community, and I think it'll be really fun to be able to do it together with Randy, and looking to hear from some of our residents, and the good and the bad and the ugly. And hopefully we can take that back and make some improvements to the city of Tempe. So thank you, Randy. I'm looking forward to it. And then, of course, we've got our College Connect workshop. It's really hard to even think about it. But if you might know a senior that is thinking about going to college, this is a great opportunity to come here on Saturday, February 3rd, because it's really all about the money and really getting some assistance and help with finding scholarships. So if you know anybody, or you have a neighbor, a friend, or a family member that is thinking about going to college and might want some one-on-one assistance with searching scholarships, this is a really great way and a good time to come. So I would encourage everybody to come February 3rd. Come at 9:45. It's just a couple of hours, but it's worth every minute that you're there. So thank you for that. And then I just on a side note, Andrew, I gotta kind of tell you this story, because I had an opportunity to go to Marina Heights the other day. They invited us to come and talk a little bit about traffic on Rio Salado and the streetcar. And I was accompanied with Parrish and Shelley and Julian and Eric and Amanda. And I got to tell you, we have some amazing people in the city. It was just a really great experience, and they were phenomenal. It's a great team, and they really tackled all the tough questions. We weren't really sure if we were going to get beat up or whatever it may be, but we had a really great crowd. But honestly, it was, I think, our staff really coming together and being able to answer all the questions that they had, and just really being able to have that one-on-one dialogue. So I know Shelley's here, and I wish everybody else was here too, but I couldn't be prouder of the great employees that we have in the city of Tempe that really, truly care. And I thought it was kind of cool that we were all there, and we all live in Tempe too. So, I mean, obviously we want what's best for our residents and our own community. So hats off to you guys, and thank you for what you do every single day.
Councilman Granville.
Okay, so I was given this slide related to the Comic-Con at the Library Plaza, I think, because this may be, I don't know if this is a prestigious honor or not, but I might be the only council member to sit through 6 hours of our meetings to then go across to the AMC to watch the midnight screening of whatever the new Marvel movie is that week. Makes the nights longer. I might be the only one who goes to the midnight screening after 6 hours of council meetings. At any rate, it's going to be a great event. People dress up. They unabashedly love the things they love, right? And if you're thinking to yourself, I can't believe people dress up as their heroes, you have to check out that jersey for the football player you got in your closet. It happens. Trust me, it happens. It's going to be a great time. The other thing I want to do is just give a quick shout out to Chris Baxter, who's not here, but has been shepherding our Instagrammies, Tempe Instagrammies, on a shoestring budget. She got over 1,100 submissions. If you are a person who has Instagram, just do a search of the hashtag Tempe Instagrammies. Honestly, I've been watching the photos as they've been rolling in. The contest is over now. It's too late. We're doing the awards tomorrow. But there could have been 500 winners. They are phenomenal. I mean, every one of them just about. And if you don't think Tempe has the best sunsets in the world, look at some of those photos. They are just amazing. So shout out to Chris Baxter for a great job. And by all means, I'm anxious to see who the winners are.
Councilmember Shapiro.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'll say I believe that Councilmember Keating and myself are also both big Marvel comic fans, but we just don't go to the midnight screening after the council meeting. We still see the movies. They're very good.
Because you have a social life.
At reasonable time. Exactly. Mayor, I just briefly want to talk about the Achieve 65 Summit that we had in Tempe today. As you know, Mayor and council members, we voted as a council to set an ambitious goal. The rest of the state is setting a goal of Achieve 60, whereas in Tempe, we are going for 65% of our residents by 2030 who will have either a college degree or a professional industry certification or licensure. And so Marie Raymond on our staff and Naomi and her team put together the summit today in conjunction with Achieve 60 with Rachel Yanoff, and we had a great meeting over at the library, and Mr. Ching was there as well. And we have some awesome partners. So, you know, we're not in it alone. We didn't just set this goal and we have to figure it out by ourselves as a city. We have some great educational partners from around our community that are going to help us get there. And I know there was some great brainstorming going on when I left to come to the council meeting, which feels like weeks ago that happened. But anyway, just wanted to say we're on a good track to get to our goal of Achieve 65 in Tempe. And the one other thing I do want to mention, and I talked about this as it was sort of in process during one of my previous COW updates about Tempe Pre. The city sent out a press release just this last week that we are the recipient of a $500,000 grant from Virginia G. Piper with our Tempe Pre program to help us with training of faculty and staff within that program. And this is something, Mayor, you and I talked about before I even came on the council, about the possibility of trying to get some philanthropic dollars. And what we've learned is it just took showing that we were willing to have some skin in the game. And I think this is one of many big checks that we will be accepting from a lot of great folks out there in the education community that want to help with our innovative Tempe Pre initiative. And so very excited about that opportunity, and want to thank in a public forum Virginia G. Piper for believing in the city.
Councilman Navarro.
Just to add on to that, we also had a member of our community, Jerry Brock, give $10,000 towards the pre-K program that's sitting there ready to be used. So a real big shout out to Jerry Brock and what he does.
Very much appreciate that as well, for sure.
Thank you. And just to recap, I mean, we're very fortunate in this community to not only have great civic organizations and volunteers in the city. I often say we're a city that cares, and we truly do. And having individuals like Jerry Brock and working with Virginia G. Piper Foundation and other entities to really fit within our strategic goals and the values that we have as a city and as a council, it really says something, and I think it sets us apart for a lot of great reasons. And Councilman Granville kind of stole my thunder on the Tempe Instagrammies. It is it's the first time ever. I do want to thank Chris Baxter. She's did a phenomenal job. From what I'm getting, my Instagram is completely full of great, beautiful pictures. I think we have I think there's a couple of reasons why we did it. Kind of, one, it's cool. You know, we're going to be awarding the Mayor's Choice Award, but two, we have a whole bunch of great photos that we could use for the city for marketing purposes. So, I mean, this is exciting to see. And not even that, I mean, and I also want to thank our great staff for putting this event on, you know, making sure it's going to be at the Tempe Center for the Arts, which a lot of the pictures came in with the Tempe Center for the Arts building, along with the lake and our Tempe pedestrian bridge. It's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity for us to see the great pictures in our community. I also want to thank staff. We had a tremendous event this last weekend. For those that don't know, we had over 22,000 runners for the Rock and Roll Marathon. and Councilman Granville was one of them. It was exciting to see all the people run. You know, they do a 1 mile run, a 5K, a 10K, and then a half marathon and a marathon. So it's great to see everyone here. My understanding is the majority, over 40% of the people that ran in it were from out of town. So that's some good numbers that I heard as well. It's a great way to showcase our community and the quality of life that we offer. And with that, we will close our comment section and we'll go to the next item, which is public appearances. According to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the City Council may only discuss matters listed on this agenda. Matters discussed by the public during public appearances cannot be discussed by the City Council unless they are specifically listed on this agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Speakers' visual aids or recorded tapes are not allowed. Members of the public shall refrain from making any personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, from becoming boisterous while addressing the City Council or attending this meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, clapping, stomping of feet, yelling, or any other similar demonstrations are also prohibited. Violation of these rules will result in the removal of the City Council chambers. We do have one individual, and I want to thank her for staying this late and being very, very patient. We have Miss Patricia Riggs. She would like to speak on street parking on Bonita Way in University Estates. And Miss Riggs is a longtime Tempe resident, so thank you for coming.
Yes, I'm born in Phoenix and age 4 days, came to Tempe and have lived here all my life. And I've always liked living here. I've been proud of Tempe. I still am. But my neighborhood has been overrun by landlords and renters. And this is not a new problem in Tempe. I have gone the route to try to get no parking or something else done so that I can have the front of my house again. It hasn't worked. The new system, apparently, I had it once and had an agreement with my neighbors and they violated it, kind of, or ran over me, or however you want to put it. But and now you have to have, I don't know what the percentage is, but I have to have 11 out of 13 or 10 out of 13 people within a certain area agree for me to have no parking. Well, they're all renters. Their landlords live in Phoenix. They have sidewalks. They don't have people parking in front of their houses. So they don't vote for me. So I'm stuck with all these renters. And we do have restricted parking. It's number 1, which says that students can't park there 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, or people without permits. Each house gets a permit up to 3 or something, and a visitor, I don't know. The students really were not the problem. It's the renters. They come in, they stay there all night, all weekend, they park all night, and then we have people that run businesses with illegal trucks and all kinds of things on their property, and then they have their workers that park all over there during the day, and their friends and their college, high school kids have friends. I never see the front of my house. The neighbor next to me got so sick of it, and he would be known to all of you if I gave his name, they got no parking. And I had it for a short time, but the neighbors promised they wouldn't park. Well, I let it go, and now I can't get it back. All the renters, any of them that were in front of his house, are now definitely in front of my house. I can't get emergency vehicles there. My backyard, this isn't what I came for, but 3 different houses put their recycled cans at my fence. They don't want to look at it. They have chain link and I don't. And I kept moving it back and fell and put a hole in my head in 15. 13 months later, I had a stroke due to that. And I'm really too young to have a stroke, but I have one. It's taken me 7 months to learn how to walk. And I don't know if I'm going to get a lot better. I'm not in therapy now because there's not much more they can do. I need emergency vehicles in front of my house. There's no place for them. I can't back out. There's cars everywhere in a little narrow street. It's hard to back out. I really need to have either a different kind of ordinance where people have to park. They can keep their parking passes, but they have to park in front of their own houses. These renters get pouches for 3 people, so 3 cars, but they don't want to park in their driveway. That's inconvenient. So they park in the street, and then they each have 2 people, 1 or 2 cars, and I have all these, I can't park. People come by to help me. I'm not supposed to live alone, and I do. Oh, there was a car there. We didn't stop. We thought somebody was helping you. And I don't know if this is the right form, but I've exhausted all my other options, so I'm here. We also, this is supposed to be sidewalks as well. We have no sidewalks. I can't walk. I saw a handicapped person in a chair fall over in front of my house in the heat. And this summer in July, he was burning, his hands was burning, he couldn't get up, he had shorts on. I happened to see him, and I happened to have someone working at my house. He ran up, picked him up, and put him on the grass and got it. We need sidewalks. This is just not compatible. We're in the middle of town. These houses were built in 1949. This is 2018. So if you can do anything, I would appreciate it. Okay, I don't want to take any more time.
I'm sorry, talk to Mr. Bessler, he's our Public Works Director. Don, if you could help real quick, and then I know Shelley's here, we get Elizabeth from our office. We'll get with you to see what we can do. Thank you for coming, and thank you for staying. That's all we have for scheduled public appearances. Next is unscheduled public appearances. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to address us under unscheduled public appearances, could you please get my attention? Ms. Springborn? Oh, I'm just kidding. I know you did. I just saw you do that, so I figured. Gotcha. I'm just kidding. All right. With that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.